Hello, you're listening to Otaku Spirit Animecast. My name is Andrew, and I'm joined here with Chris.
Yo.
And today's episode is our second parter of our Spring 2022 anime season reviews. I should have put more in the last episode. There's so much to go through. Of course, a portion of these are going to be continuing shows, so it's more just kind of an idea of our thoughts on it so far. But yes, we have Komi-san Can't Communicate second season, Spriggan, Skeleton Knight Another World, Bastard, Heroines Run the Show, Shin Ikkitousen, Miss Shachiku, and the Little Baby Ghost, Day Live Season 4, Love After World Domination, Spy X Family, Don't Hurt Me My Healer, Birdie Wing, Kaginado Season 2, Shield Hero Second Season, Dawn of the Witch, The Demon Girl Next Door, In the Heart of Kunoichi Tsubaki, Kaguya-sama Love is Ultra Romantic, and like I said, we'll do mid-season reviews for Summertime Rendering, A Couple of Cuckoos, and AoAshi. Unfortunately, Onippon is done, so we're not. I thought it was still going in the next season, so I didn't get caught up. But apparently, it finished. Oops. Didn't we say that in a preview that it was like continuing on?
I thought we've seen it continuing on.
That's weird. It's that whole episode count they did, because there was like their count was like per episode, which is technically compiled into five into one episode here. It was weird. So sorry. It's cute. Go watch it if you want a cute show. But anyways, let's get started because it's going to be a very, very long podcast probably. So let's start off with Komi Can't Communicate, and I apparently can't communicate either. The second season, Komi-san wa Komyo Sho Desu. This one streamed on Netflix, I think. Yes, Netflix. It's still on Netflix. Ran for 12 episodes, done by Studio OLM. The source is a manga. The genres are comedy, romance, slice of life. And yeah, this one, the series composition, still done by Hitomi Ueno, who of course has done a lot of amazing stuff. So really cool there. For those that are familiar with the series, essentially follows a guy named Tadano, and he is going to a school of special people. Everybody there is really special, apparently. They emphasize that at the very beginning. Everybody's super special at this school, but he's super plain, apparently. I don't know if that's changed in the second season. Like, we find out his special thing.
His special thing is that he's normal.
But there's going to be something else that makes him special, because normal isn't special. So it's going to be something.
That is his special
No, there's going to be something else.
He's so normal that he's normal.
That was the joke at the beginning, but I know there's got to be something else. He's special at communicating. I don't know. He's special at making friends. Anyways, at some point, he realizes that this girl, Komi-san, is obviously trying to communicate in some way. So he goes on a chalkboard, starts communicating to her by, writing, and she goes crazy and starts talking a bunch because she has a lot to say, but she unfortunately is not good at communication, as the title, I know, shockingly tells you. But yeah, and thus making friends. She wants to make 100 friends because that's what anime characters want to do all the time, is make 100 friends. It's always 100. It's never 200. It's never 20. It's always 100. So how's the second season?
Second season did a lot of the same that they did in the first season, but we are actually starting to see Komi starting to make progress, let's just say. It's absolutely, in a lot of ways, heartwarming in some of the things that they do. They have a birthday party. They did some of the Christmas stuff, the New Year stuff, all in the same time frame, as a matter of fact, in just so everybody knows. So it kind of works out that they get to go through all those things at the same time. But yeah, we get some, of course, more characters as she's building up her list. And absolutely loved a lot of the heartwarming stuff that they did. We've got really close to people acknowledging feelings and stuff like that. So yeah, great season this season for sure.
Sounds extremely exciting. Komi-san Can't Communicate second season. Check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. There you go. Exciting stuff. Spriggan is our next one. This is like super exciting. I'm just kidding. Spriggan, this one streamed on Netflix, ran for 6 episodes. Technically, they're like 45-minute episodes, so it's pretty much a full season of like 12 episodes worth of time, so keep that in mind. This, of course, is based off of a manga back in 1989, and they did a movie in 1998, but apparently Netflix is liking to pull back old properties to the modern times, and so Spriggan was one of them. This was done by Studio David Production. This source is a manga, like I said earlier. The genres are action, adventure, and sci-fi. This takes place in kind of a semi-futuristic, not very far futuristic world. I only say futuristic because it looks like our world, but it's like there's technologies in it that we don't really have right now. Like super, well, we could have, just the government doesn't want us to know. Like they have like, you know, muscle suits and stuff like that that make people like super strong and stuff like that, or impenetrable. It essentially all kind of stems down to this discovery that mankind made at some point, where they found these tablets where it kind of warned them that there's this ancient technology. Like the people of old, they kind of claimed they're gods. Like the people of long time ago created technologies that are extremely powerful and extremely dangerous. And like I said, this tablet basically warns mankind, like, you need to safeguard from these things. These things could destroy the world. So thus we create, this kind of secret organization gets created that their sole goal is to find these relics of the past and either destroy them or, you know, keep them safe and put away. And in order to protect these people that have to find these things, they enlist these people known as the Spriggans. And the Spriggans are just kind of very skilled combatants and stuff like that. We follow one specific one named Yu. And Yu, his whole thing is that he has, again, this armored bodysuit thing. He's really strong, very skilled in combat. So we essentially follow Yu as he is kind of dispatched different locations to protect the people that are finding and uprooting these artifacts. And then again, like I said, either destroy them or, you know, hide them away. So it could give you an idea. Like the first case, they have this whole situation where somebody is the bloodline of this this group of people that were supposed to safeguard Mount Fuji, and that they had the power and the capacity to actually trigger Mount Fuji. There's like these like mythological dragon-looking lava things that can come out of it, and he can actually control the flow of lava, make it erupt or not. Giving them some sort of power. And then, of course, later on, you have like this whole Noah's Ark thing. Oh, by the way, Noah's Ark actually exists. And by the way, it's not what is, you know, told in the Bible. It's actually this thing that can, when Noah gets inside of it, it's like both a creation thing and a destruction thing. So he can destroy the world and reform the world. It's like a terraforming device. And then also there's like this ability within inside of the Ark to be able to create new life. So there's like all these chambers inside of it to produce new life forms and stuff. So it's more than just what is told in the Bible. It's like something even more so. So again, lots of people want this stuff. They're very powerful devices. You know, you have the crystal skull and stuff like that people want, and thus different countries that want this power will send their best people to go get them. And like I said, Yu is typically there to stop them and possibly destroy the device if they can't get it themselves. So it's kind of the gist of the whole story, and like I said, just going to each one of these things. Now, this is kind of, I would say, first and foremost, this is obviously going to be a thing of its time. Now, unfortunately, this goes back to our whole discussion that we've had several times before, where we love seeing this stuff come back to life. We love seeing these studios and these production groups really kind of bringing these old things and breathing new life into them, because there's these old properties that we had, you know, this fondness for way back in the 80s and 90s. Now, the unfortunate thing is that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like, for instance, Ushio and Tora, we absolutely loved their remake of that one. Dororo was pretty awesome. They kind of managed to increase, help the pacing a bit, you know, put some little bit of story beats in there, cut out some fat, and managed to give them a new leg in our new, very impatient selves in this time and age. Everything that we watch these days has to have like really fast pacing, and things have to keep moving, and we have to keep being intrigued. Whereas, again, it's a simpler time back in the 80s and 90s where you could just have a monster of the week and it works out. Spriggan's kind of in a, it's kind of in the middle area, I would say. It's not quite there. Like, it still has the issue with being a monster of the week or an artifact of the week, but at the same time, it's got a really nice polish to it. Now, I will say there's a lot of, most everything, like, action related is all CGI in the show. Like, Yu himself is just, every time you see him, unless he's in his casual outfit, he's always CGI. Now, I will say David Production did a really solid job of kind of blending Yu into the environments. Every now and then, it would be difficult, but they did a really good job of kind of blending him in. but there's other times where it just you obviously see it. And especially with like other soldiers, they'll just send in like a massive amount of old soldiers, and they're all CGI, and they look very obviously CGI. So it's kind of hit and miss. Visually, it's very hit and miss. I think my biggest issue that I have with the visual style is, although I love seeing like this old style of anime come back, an old style of manga, the old 80s and 90s, even back further, style of character designs. This is like a hodgepodge. Like there's just so many different styles in here. We have characters that look like he's from Dragon Ball. You have characters from like old shoujo manga. It's like it's all over the place in style. But again, I really do love seeing a lot of this old style come back. The show itself, I won't claim that it's doing anything at all fascinating. I did find, certain things like Noah's Ark and it being some weird twisted thing about creation and destruction, that kind of stuff. Some of the artifacts were a little bit interesting, but for the most part, it's kind of just an excuse to get action scenes over and over again. So, and I think it does decently well. Like it has a good chemistry mixed in there, especially when Yoshino's in the show. Yoshino and Yu do really well to kind of bounce off of each other, because you have the mischievous, I want to, get money for myself kind of girl, and then you have the duty bound, I need to go get this artifact and get rid of it kind of situation with Yu. So there's a good chemistry there. Even with Jean and Yu were fantastic chemistry between the two of them as well. I think this show manages to pull off some really solid chemistry with certain episodes, but in other episodes, it's usually typically just Yu, and Yu is running in there and just demolishing everybody. And so there's not much to really work with in regards to story or characters or anything like that. So in the end, I think my takeaway from the show is that it's a fun popcorn action show with a little bit of intrigue in there with the artifacts and some decent chemistry between the characters to kind of fill in the gaps between stuff. That said, this is kind of up in there, like in the higher tier of your typical, just shut off your brain action shows, because it's just kind of nonstop. Like it's just there's action scene after action scene that it seems like every 2 steps there's just an excuse to have another action scene. So it does very well in the idea of constantly giving you something to watch and some crazy stuff to happen on the screen, not just characters sitting around talking for endless hours about the next artifact they're going to get. And I think that says something, and maybe that's something they improved with this new adaptation, because I don't even think I watched the original Spriggan. If I did, I don't remember it. So it's been so long. Back in the 90s, we're talking 20 plus years now. So yeah, it's a good little action, fun, turn your brain off, have fun type of show. And I think, like I said, I think it helps because there's a lot of action and there's good chemistry. So if that sounds to you, definitely check it out. Like I said, it's on Netflix. It's a pretty hefty watch. Like I said, it's technically a full season. So there you go. And I think I don't really care that it really doesn't have, I think 6 episodes is solid. I mean, you're not going to get like it doesn't feel like the whole, it doesn't feel like all the artifacts are obviously found. So this is one of those things where it can keep going and keep going. So I don't really feel like there's like there was no drop off at the very end of it, if I remember correctly. I think they did introduce a couple characters at the very end of it, but that's typical for Netflix. That seems like every show they do now, especially Bastard, I'll talk about later, every one of them has to have some sort of hook at the very end of it, very obviously placed. But it being a dumb action flick, I don't really care. It's not like I'm like, oh my gosh, plot twist. I don't care. It had a pretty solid climax battle at the very end of it that's really kind of significant to you, so it works out. So good characters, good chemistry, good action. If you need anything more than that, don't expect it. Don't expect some crazy story. But yeah, that's Spriggan. Check that out if that's interesting to you. Skeleton Knight in Another World. Let's get into some fantasy. Gaikotsu Kishi-sama Tadaima Isekai e Ode Kakechu. This one's streamed on Crunchyroll, ran for 12 episodes, done by Studio Kai and Hornets. The source is a light novel, and the genres are action and fantasy. And this one follows a guy who is playing a video game, and at some point he wakes up and he is in the video game, and he's also his avatar, this skeleton character that he role-played as that had some curse and stuff. So obviously a little bit shocked. Doesn't really seem to care too quickly, because as we find out, Ark, this character that he is he really loves fantasy, so he's kind of just goes with it. Like he's just like, all right, cool. He's obviously a little bit afraid because if he shows up at some inn or a bar as a skeleton guy, he's probably going to get a lot of attention, and people are probably going to want to hunt him down because he's undead. But that was kind of the character that he was playing as and role playing as, so it didn't make sense. It didn't bother him before. He's still got all of his stuff. He's got this really overpowered armor. You come to find out that because he kind of changed classes the time that he did, he's got like a mixture of, you know, knight class paladin stuff and like magery and stuff. Like it's almost like because he chose the path that he did, which is really weird, that most people probably wouldn't do. He just like gets pretty much everything. So that's kind of his quirk for being overpowered, is that he's got like most all skills. But yeah, it just kind of follows him as he just kind of enjoys the fantasy world and walks around, and then eventually gets kind of tied in with this this elf that's trying to find her captured people. Come to find out the kingdoms are doing human trafficking with the elves, and later on you find out the beast people as well. So bad humans, and stopping them because Ark just wants to enjoy in fantasy. So yeah, your thoughts?
This one actually surprised me with some of the direction that they went with some of the storylines. I was really surprised. I mean, yeah, there's the goofy side of Ark and his getting absolutely otaku'd out over pretty much anything fantasy wise, elves and beast girls. He just absolutely, he's an enjoyable type of character.
It's
where
like he sees like a back alley deal, and there's like these two people talking obviously about something shady. And then you're like thinking, oh man, he's going to say something about this back alley deal, and somebody could probably be in trouble. No, he just goes, oh, elf ears. It's an elf fantasy. That's just him. That's him. Like something happens like seriously bad, and you would think like normally somebody's like, intriguing. No, he's just like, oh, fantasy.
So yeah, I Ark works out as this just goofy
I don't
otaku.
know why he's so likable.
He is
so likable.
Some of the other stuff, I was really surprised at how, in some ways, respectable, and in a way, because of it wasn't that it wasn't being serious about, like Andrew was mentioning, the human trafficking aspect. It was respectful in the way it was handling it, and yet at the same time, you
could argue it's excessive.
Excessive, yeah.
Just like the girls being forced upon by men. It's just like it's like that's the two plot lines: saving people from cages and saving women from being ravaged.
And at the same time, it put a heavy weight on it. Yet at the same time, it wasn't so much that you couldn't handle it, for lack of a better term. It's one of those things that when I'm going in to watch a show, if I was watching something that was kind of dealing with something this heavy, because it is a very heavy subject, it does bring it into awareness. This is something that is happening, and I do like that it was using this in a way to deal with it. Yeah, Ark is a hero in for lack of a better term, but I don't know how I feel about it being in this story. It's one of those things that kind of is a weird balance in some ways. But I do like the fact that they tried to touch upon it. It is a dark subject, and at the same time, still keeping a fairly entertaining story. Like I said, I feel weird about that aspect of it, but I do love the show, and I love the fact that they're trying to kind of bring more dealing with racism in some cases, and how there's the elves and the humans and how they have a hard time communicating because there is this element of human trafficking going through the kingdoms. So there's a lot of things that are actually surprisingly interesting in this show. So I enjoyed it overall. A very interesting story for sure.
Yeah, I'm of two minds. Like on one end, I don't think this show has really any focus. Like it's there, but I don't feel like it ever does anything with it other than just to have the excuse for Ark to run around and be overpowered. But at the same time, I enjoy it. Like I enjoy watching Ark just geek out about the fantasy world, and it really felt like every time that I watched the show, it was just all all right, what goofy shenanigans is Arc going to do this time? What goofy overpowered ability is he going to use this time? Well, technically didn't really jump around on his abilities. It really is a lot of him being able to teleport everywhere and slice things.
Yeah, he teleports everywhere.
He teleports everywhere. Like, you don't see him walk. But at the same time, anything outside of that, I really just felt like an excuse for him to find the girl. Like, okay, so there's trafficking happening with the elves. Okay, time to meet Ariane. Okay, there's trafficking happening with the beast people too. Time to meet Chiome. And then shenanigans. And so I don't really feel like it really, like I said, it felt like a very purposeless show, because it was just nothing but let's go beat slice guys in half and open cages, slice people in half, open cages. Oh, girl over there being forced upon, slice guys in half, pick her up, help her get her clothes. It really just felt like that was the only excuse. Now, I think the only thing that's aside to that is just kind of Ariana meeting her family, doing the whole thing with the princess on the side, which, again, I felt like it was there, but didn't do anything. Like, you have this whole aspect of, obviously, there is a leader in play that is doing the deals of the trafficking, even though they're supposed to have this agreement. And yet, she, after being saved by Arc, finds it to be her purpose in order to fix that. And again, didn't feel like we did anything with it. So it feels like a lot of story stuff around Arc being geeky fantasy just feels like it doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of exists there. It doesn't feel like it, and it feels so disjointed from Arc. Like, it feels like every now and then suddenly, oh, what are we doing over here? So something's happening over here. Oh, hey, back to Arc. All right, and then it never, the lines never meet. It's just always kind of separate. Just like it's almost reminds me of like So Must Buy or So What. It's like every now and then you pop over to humans and you're like, what are we doing over here? Okay, sure, cool, all right. Cool, back to Arc. All right, we're back to Arc. All right, Arc, do something goofy and teleport and slice people in half. All right, cool. And fantasy. So it's like where I mentioned that I'm two minds. It's like, on one end, critically, I think this show does nothing and it has no purpose and it has no focus. On the other end, I had fun with it. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoy the shenanigans. I enjoy watching Arc just geek out. Chiome's fantastic. I loved Ariana. It's got a fun main cast. It feels like they have no purpose in the end, besides maybe Arc trying to figure out a way of getting rid of his curse, but it's not really cursed because it's his written character, and him trying to play it off as being just a curse because he doesn't want to explain to people that he's actually a person that's trapped in the game that made his character be a skeleton guy. It's kind of goofy. I like at some point it kind of addresses the idea that it technically is a curse because he wrote it that way in his role play, but it's different. It's kind of weird in that regard. So visually it looks fine. Pretty much the entire show Arc is all CGI. They did a good job of blending him into the environment. I never really felt like, ooh, gross CGI. Ariana and Chiome, their CGI was a little more rough feeling. I think maybe because they look like anime characters, whereas Arc is just a big piece of armor. So it's a little easier for me to know, like, that just doesn't look right. That doesn't look like the character design or whatever. Whereas Arc is always a CGI armor. So I never see that difference between the CGI and the 2D self. So, but it didn't look bad at all. So there you go. It's not like I'm telling anybody to go watch the show, but if you just want to watch a dork geek out about being in a fantasy world, that would be my only suggestion, to go and watch the show. If you don't care about watching a geek be in a fantasy world, I don't think you're going to find anything in the show, honestly, because it's just an excuse to kill bandits.
Yeah, and that's
I think that's the only reason that it works. Like you're kind of hinting at earlier with the idea that it feels like it's there, which is a touchy subject, but it doesn't like offend you. I think that's maybe because it never really feels like he ever fails. Every time somebody's in danger, he always gets there in time and slices everybody in half, and you're like, yes, everybody got sliced in half.
Right.
There was only like maybe one time where he just didn't arrive in time, and it never really sat on it. It never showed it. Never set in that situation to really make you feel depressed or sad or anything like that. So
yeah, the weight of it is odd because it doesn't, like Andrew was kind of hinting at, it doesn't really fit in the story. I mean, you want to see Arc have fun and fantasy, and then but with the heaviness of the other subject, it's like, I understand why it's there, because it gives Arc a reason to do his quest effectively, and it's respectful, and at the same time, it doesn't fit, for a lack of a better term.
Yeah. It's fun fantasy, but yet oh yeah, by the way, bad world.
Yeah.
Fantasy. Skeleton Knight, Another World. Check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Next one we have is Bastard, Heavy Metal, Dark Fantasy, or Bastard, Ankoku no Hakai Shin, the ONA version, the new one. They redid it for some reason. This one's streamed on Netflix, ran for 13 episodes. Apparently it's supposed to be a 2-core show. I haven't found any information besides the fact that it's listed on AniList as 25 episodes, and I think Miami List lists another part with 11 episodes, so apparently we're getting more later. I unfortunately did not get a chance to really look into it. I will say that this first core just kind of stops. It just has this big moment. Honestly, I think the way that it ended would be really cool if they stopped it here. Like, they just said, thanks for watching, that's the end. That would actually be pretty cool, but I know that it continues on, so thus it's a really bad stopping point, so... studio is Litle Films, sources of manga, genres are action, adventure, comedy, fantasy, ecchi. And yes, this is kind of another one that had a original adaptation a long time ago. It's from an old manga, so it's kind of in the same vein as Spriggan, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Unless you're skipping forward to hear my review on this one, and then shame on you for skipping. There you go. Genres are action, adventure, comedy, fantasy, ecchi. Director on this one was Takeharu Ozaki, who did Girls Last Tour, Goblin Slayer, and Wave. Series composition by Yosuke Kuroda, who did Pretty Sammy, Duel, Onegai Teacher, Gungrave, Hayate the Combat Butler, and My Hero Academia. So this one... God, the story is a jumbled mess. Essentially, it opens up with this idea that it's modern times world, and that mankind has this feeling of darkness and sins that it's kind of created, and it's trying to create something to stop the sin and darkness of the world. It's kind of indicated the idea that there's humankind's trying to create world peace of some sort, and they end up spawning this thing of darkness, and this thing just comes out of nowhere. This gigantic, I don't know, floating something, and it has a face on it, and it says that it's going to take out all mankind's sins by wiping it all out. Suddenly, out of nowhere, for some reason, light jets from the ground into the sky, and this dragon slash blade slash something appears, fights the thing. The world's pretty much destroyed because of the fight between these two beings, and eventually the dragon blade thing wins against the darkness thing, and cut forward many years, and now it seems like mankind hasn't rebuilt the structures they had before. Now it's more like a fantasy medieval time looking world, and mankind's kind of forgotten about the reason for that whole battle that happened a long time ago, why the darkness existed, and at least that's what it tells us that mankind forgot. I don't know, it never talked about it again. At some point, it jumps forward, and now we're in a medieval setting because, like I said, I think mankind didn't rebuild itself. And now we are following a girl named Yoko, and she is a part of like some priesthood. She's like the daughter of this pope, and she has this boy that she's been taking care of, and come to find out that boy has the soul and the memories of this great wizard of, like, I think it was like 10 or 13 years ago, this great wizard that was sealed away inside this boy, and this wizard's like the most powerful being ever. His name is Dark Schneider. And so the whole... Okay, I'm making this way too complicated. The whole shtick here is that bad things happen, and then Yoko has to kiss this boy that she's been taking care of, and it unlocks the seal of Dark Schneider, this great wizard, and he shows up and talks about how he wants to destroy the world like he was planning on before they sealed him away, and he wants to get revenge against her father because he's part of the reason why he was sealed away. And the thing is that this boy that she's raised this whole time, his mind is like merged with Dark Schneider. So even though Dark Schneider wants to destroy the world, he still has all the memories and the love and the emotion for Yoko that he's grown up with. So even though this guy is like an evil wizard that wants to destroy the entire world and rule over it, if she says don't, he kind of goes back into that young boy's self of like, oh, don't hit me kind of thing. So it's obviously really goofy to everybody because everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's Dark Schneider, the guy from, 10 plus years ago that was destroying the entire world, the greatest wizard ever. And nobody can stand up against him. He tears him up in one spell. But Yoko, if she says stop, it's kind of like the Inuyasha thing. It's the sit thing. It's totally like an Inuyasha thing of like sit. And then suddenly he just goes into like the cowering boy thing, which is kind of actually one of my favorite parts about the show, honestly. But the whole thing is in the background, Dark Schneider's old team, like the people that stood beside him, his old generals that were helping him destroy the world and revive this darkness that was going to destroy the world, they're trying to revive that darkness again. And so he's now in the kingdom that they need to destroy in order to unlock that seal. So while he's saying, I don't want to save your kingdom, I want to destroy the world too. So I'm going to go out there and destroy the world. And they're pleading for him, hey, please, we've revived you again. Can you come destroy this general that's now showing up at our kingdom to give her the seal? He's just like, no, I don't want to do it. And then Yoko has to say, do it. And he's like, okay, whatever. I'm going to do it for Yoko, but I don't care no more. It's the whole thing. But the other thing is that every time he kind of gets out of place and they get in an argument, him and Yoko, he'll eventually kiss her, or she'll kiss him, and he'll go back to being the young boy that she raised. So again, that's the whole shtick, is kissed. It's kind of like that was another show that had the kiss that changed somebody. But yeah, it's the whole thing where kissing to transform and then fight and then kiss to transform back and back to calmness. But yeah, that's Bastard. It's a dumb idea. It makes sense. I mean, it's the whole sealed away super powerful being that has limits because it could be sealed away at any time to kind of prevent it from destroying everything. And the whole concept of somebody, there's obviously a lot of emphasis on his old generals, obviously, fighting against him once again, and then realizing, wait, Schneider, you've changed a lot. Why are you acting so different? Normally, you would kill your opponent. You wouldn't spare anybody. That's because this child that Yoko raised is technically mixed in with his mind. So as he claims it, anything that he loves, I will love too, which is going to be Yoko. So there's a cute aspect there. I do enjoy that changing of Schneider and him not being this evil sorcerer, even though he keeps saying that he wants to destroy everything because that was his original purpose. It kind of gets very harem-y very quickly. And the fact that the princess at some point has to get involved, and she has a fascination with him. I kind of kick myself because I watched this show mostly in dub, in the English dub. And then at some point, I switched it over back to the Japanese and realized the princess was now Toyama. And I'm like, damn it. I've been watching this show this whole time, and it's now Toyama's in here. And yeah, listening to now Toyama be a little bit more in spicier scenes was interesting. So fans of now Toyama can enjoy that, because yes, it's quite an ecchi show. It is very ecchi show, but at the same time, it doesn't really show too much. And oftentimes, whenever it gets very risque, it's usually kind of just suggestive stuff. Like the idea of, like, at some point he gets poisoned, and so he asks the princess to suck the poison out of his belly, and so obviously they have to show an angle which it makes it look like she's doing something different. It's that kind of stuff. Or she's, he's got her over his shoulders and he's running around, and it's obviously rubbing her in places that, they're interesting places. It's that kind of stuff. So it does get pretty ecchi. It does get very suggestive at a lot of the time, and it took a while to start to get into that stuff, honestly, like a couple episodes before they really started ramping that stuff up. And that's kind of where I started having a little bit more fun watching this show, just because it was a little more goofy and quirky, and the characters, the chemistry between the characters and the more comedy stuff starts coming out. Because I think this show, as like a high fantasy magical type of show, works. It's fine, but it's not doing anything special. It's really when it gets into the more ecchi comedy stuff where I think it's a lot more fun and entertaining for myself. Even though I think every battle scene were fun, I think most of them kind of just end with a very one note, oh, he used this ability, and thus it's not counterable. It does kind of evolve over time. When you get some other fights that he ends up running into, it gets to be a little bit more complicated with how he's going to overcome his foe, because they have some way of countering him in some way, turning him into stone or stopping his magical abilities. But yeah, like I said, it's not, the storyline is just not really there. I mean, like I said, it's really just his past generals trying to awaken the darkness, and Schneider just doing whatever Schneider wants to do, while at the same time that bounce off of Yoko and her relationship that she's had with this other half of him. It does get a little bit more interesting and heavy towards the later part when you start getting into somebody that Schneider had raised at some point, this girl named Nei. And her whole situation is that she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to betray her companions, but at the same time does have this relationship with Schneider for a long time. And like I said, that was that whole aspect that I mentioned where if they did technically end it the way they did, it would be really crazy. But how they kind of wrapped up in that situation was one of the more interesting story bits they did in this entire thing. Most of the time, it's just kind of goofy shenanigan, beat general. It got very formulaic for a little bit there as he's kind of going through all these generals, and legit, each one of them is like, I'm going to defeat you. Oh, you defeated me. Oh, you swooned me. Please don't fight the next one. The next one will definitely kill you. Oh, I'll fight you. I'll defeat you. I'm not going to betray the boss like the other one did. Oh, you defeated me. Oh, you swooned me. Please don't fight the next one. It feels like that with like each fight. But like I said, each fight's kind of unique in their own respect. So in the end, everything aside, I enjoyed it. It was fine. It's not doing anything crazy, but it's fun. It was a fun little bit of old school fantasy. One of the more higher fantasy type of shows with like crazier magic and stuff like that. It has quite a bit of hint of D&D in there. It's kind of funny realizing at some point they're making a lot of D&D references in the idea of like how most people can maybe have one or two spells. Schneider's special in the fact that he can have like a whole bunch of spells in a single day. Is that whole idea of not having to rest and that you have all these magic slots that you can work with, even though they technically at some point break it and they make a joke about it. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking in the show. I think one of the moments where it got extremely ecchi, it suddenly has this dragon guy yell out, "This is supposed to be a shonen manga." Like I said, that's the whole idea of them kind of really playing heavily into the more etchier and sort of raunchy moments, and then kind of joking it off because they don't want to actually step over that line, even though they're showing plenty of stuff. It's fun. It was a fun show. I was surprising how much I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the characters, even though it gets, like I said, repetitive at times, especially at the beginning, especially when they start introducing all the generals of Nai.
It's kind of funny because you don't know how many of those nostalgia buttons you're hitting on me, and I'm really, really wanting to go and watch this one.
I mean, compared to Spriggan, this was a much more enjoyable nostalgia trip. Like I said, I think when they first announced Bastard, I was kind of getting excited for it because, yeah, we had a lot of fun back in the day with things like Record of Lodoss Wars and stuff like that. And yes, technically a lot of those older 80s and 90s shows that had everything in it. Like every ONA, OVA back in the day was violence, gore, ecchi, raunchy stuff, nudity. It was all in there. And this kind of hits all of them, though a lot of the nudity aspect of that is kind of sidestepped. Like you can see the sides or whatever. They don't really show like full frontals or anything like that. And like I said, it doesn't go all the way with a lot of the raunchier moments. So
what? Full frontal's not in here?
No. It was funny because somebody was talking about the fact that they hide the nips, and I was like, oh, it's kind of creepy at times. So I don't know. I didn't know what they were talking about with it, but it was more of an aspect of they just don't really show the front, even though like with the princess and her outfit, you could see obviously like that it's cold. It's cold in the chapel. So it kind of showed that they exist. It's just they didn't show them whenever there was more of those shots because it was always like sided or something in the way or something like that. Hairs in the way or something like that. But no, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was one of the more enjoyable Netflix shows for sure. But at the same time, like I said earlier, it's not finished. Like, it legit's too core, and they stop it on a really kind of big note. So it's one of those things where it's not going to be what it is, but it ends on that, and it's like, really, we're going to stop there? Like, you're not going to at least show like two scenes after that so we can get an idea of what happens after it. So dumb fun fantasy, D&D, everything, violence, ecchi, everything. Fun little show. Bastard, heavy, metal, dark fantasy. Check it out if that's interesting to you. And a lot of the listings show that it's running through 2022, so I'm not sure if that means that they're running the second half sometime later this year. But it kind of indicates the idea that it has to at least be this year unless something changes, so we'll see. Heroines Run the Show, or Heroine Taru Mono Kira ware heroine to naisho no oshigoto. So streamed on Crunchyroll, running for 12 episodes, done by Studio Ledus. based on a song by Honeyworks. The genres are music, slice of life, drama. Series composition by Yoshimi Narita, who did Senpai is Annoying, I Star Chu. And this one follows Hiyori. And Hiyori is out in the sticks, living in some area outside of Tokyo, way out in the sticks. It kind of mentioned at some point she was such a country bumpkin out in the middle of nowhere that she didn't even really know. They didn't have like TV and stuff like that to know which idols were like these super popular idols. Because obviously, as we find out, as she meets a very popular idol group, she doesn't know who the hell they are because she never really sees idols. I think she mentioned that they just have radio and that's about it. But yeah, she's out in the middle of nowhere. At some point, she realizes, even though she really loves track, she loves running, they don't really have any sort of track at the next school year that she's going to. So she decides that she's going to move to Tokyo and live there on her own so that she can join a school there that has a track team. So thus she gets picked up and runs off, goes to Tokyo, and joins this new school. And very quickly, like I mentioned earlier, finds out that she is in the same class as a popular two-man boy band group, idol group, named Litle. And again, she doesn't know who they are. She doesn't care, but she always seems to run into them and see them arguing and fighting and gets, flack for trying to stop them from fighting. And at some point, she finds out that her father is not doing well, so she decides that she's going to help out with the money by getting a job so that she can at least pay for her rent and stuff. And that ends up leading her to, becoming the assistant manager in training of Litle, which kind of works out in the end because she doesn't know who they are. She's not like a super fan like everybody else that would probably be hired. So they kind of let her join and become their assistant manager. But kind of leaves this whole idea that, on the side of doing assistant manager work, also in school, she's supposed to keep it a secret that she's assistant manager, but she's also supposed to help them stop from fighting. So it's like she's working like pretty much the entire day for Litle, which is, I hope she's getting paid a lot for that.
Right.
But obviously the Litle is not as they seem as most people see them. They're actually very argumentative. They kind of hate each other. Aizo has an issue with girls in general. He kind of freaks out when he's around girls, but he kind of hides it when he's around them. And Yojiro is just kind of a jerk. He's just kind of a jerk. So your thoughts on Heroines Run the Show?
I really did love this show. I'm going to be very clear. I love the fact that there's these themes of working hard to get to your goal. How work can interfere with your goals. How finding your true purpose and all that stuff. The Juliet thing is actually kind of the way that they kind of deal with it is very interesting. I love the fact that they show the idol industry in a different way. I think that they did that really well. The forbidden sins of how idols and having a relationship and how that affects how that affects idols is very interesting. I really like the way that they dealt with a lot of these things. So I really did enjoy a lot of this show. It's one of those things that I jumped into it, and I think Andrew has mentioned several times that Hiyori's voice actress actually really pulls at you, and you really kind of want to watch her as she's fighting really hard for her ultimate goals. She is this show is very charming in a lot of ways. So I really did come away from it very much enjoying it, and highly suggest it.
She's a Genki Rem.
Yep.
She's Rem, but super Genki. I think I had zero expectations coming to the show, like seeing the cover art and really getting that sense of it's not it being based off of a song. It's like, okay, I don't really have any expectations for this really having much writing here to really work with, but it ended up being very enjoyable in how it kind of laid things out, because obviously I think the biggest draw early on, even though she can get pretty loud, Hiyori is a go-getter. She's a underdog that's in a kind of a rough situation, and she just pushes forward with like a bright smile. And it is one of those aspects that you're kind of at the same time waiting for the moment that she breaks. Like, she's obviously very positive. She's obviously pushing forward. Nothing really stops her from always having a smile on her face, despite the fact that everybody around her is kind of a jerk. You just want to see her succeed because she does have the go-getter mentality. And that was, again, like I said, the driving force for me early on, because I didn't really care for Litle. I knew I was going to care for I wasn't going to care for them in the beginning because they're obviously purposely wrote to be kind of jerks, and that's why Hiyori has to kind of fix them. But I do like the fact that it's not as direct a fixing that I was kind of expecting from the very beginning. It doesn't feel like Hiyori says, you need to stop being a jerk and you need to get over your issues with girls. It really does feel like just her being there and supporting them, despite the fact that they keep pushing back against her, does seem to kind of change them over time. And it's their experience with both her plus their jobs they're doing eventually kind of opens their eyes to the situation they're in. One of the earlier pushing points for Aizo and Yojiro, the Lip team, is they do feel like, or they do get it thrown in their face that they don't really have, they have a facade, and their responses to questions are very generic. There's a radio show that they go to that is with another boy band that's a little more, actually a lot more successful than they are. And there's like this little conversation between the two of them. They're asking, like, what is the thing that inspires you to do what you do? And they give like this very kind of generic, we do it for the girls, we do it for our Juliets, that kind of stuff. And they're like, one of the guys just points out, why you lying? Like, is that it kind of thing? It kind of gives that little hint to them that they got to find their purpose. They got to find the thing they're really striving for and not just be a generic boy band group, which, yeah, kind of some people can kind of shrug at, but it kind of worked in the end. I enjoyed it. I agree. They do kind of get into a bit. Let me start off by saying there is one thing that kind of brought the show down for me quite a bit, and that was kind of the later parts, the later segment of the show, the last true arc of the series. I was fine with Hiyori. I was fine with this idea that she, you know, is obviously having a lot of difficulties with both her own dreams and Lip. There's a struggle there when your time's kind of caught up in your work, and like I mentioned earlier, technically she's working in the evening and while she's at work or at school technically. But there's a conflict there. There's only so many hours in the day, and what you do at your job could affect you physically with what you're doing with your dreams. And I was fine with that stuff. Anything really around Hiyori, I enjoyed. And I was actually pretty okay with Lip and their development. But there was another aspect of the story at the later segment of the show, and it felt like it made me kind of tense up, like, ugh, what are we doing here? I didn't like it, and I really didn't care for how it resolved, but it was that whole idea of the fans, and kind of what Chris was hinting at a minute ago was this idea of those unwritten rules that you must kind of follow as a fan of a idol group technically. So I don't know. It felt rough, and I kind of get it. I understand the story at the same time. It felt like it was kind of presented in a way that I wasn't too fond of, but it is what it is. It kind of made me think to myself, like, yeah, drag her back in there when it's obviously unhealthy. Obviously she can't handle it healthily. Let's drag her back in there, but it was fine. I will give a warning. I mentioned this, I think, in my first impressions. It really felt like when the show first opened up, it threw a lot of characters on the screen. I think it's fine in the end. It didn't feel like my biggest fear was going to be that we were going to have to really dig into every single one of these characters, and it really didn't. It just kind of had these people be around Hiyori and obviously affect her in some way as she went through her story. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be from the initial impressions of, it's a lot of characters. It's a lot of characters. It really felt like 15 characters all introduced in the first episode. So it was enjoyable. I enjoyed it. I love Hiyori. She was a lot of fun. She's very much a go-getter. And it was a decent story in the end. I enjoyed how kind of inspirational it is in the end, and finding your dreams and juggling things, and finding your purpose, I guess, is in the end.
That is something to be said. If you take away nothing else from the show, I said it was the Juliet thing. It's they refer to it as my Juliets or something like that. But when it comes down to it, it's be the heroine of your own story. I thought that was just fantastic takeaway. If nothing else came out of that show, it was definitely that.
clever. When they have this whole idea of people like asking if they have a relationship with somebody because it's obviously a scandal at some point. They're like, no, we don't. We love our Juliets, which is like literally any fan. It's like, nice, clever. That's a way to get around it. You claim that every fan is your girl. Every single one of them. Oh, the fandom vital sometimes scares me. It scares me sometimes. And yes, one of the fans scares me a lot. Heroines Run the Show. Check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Shin Ikkitousen, this kind of happened. Not much to talk about here. I'm going to be brutally honest. Shin Ikkitousen happened. This is, of course, a sequel to Ikkitousen, which I guess I need to make that clear because we weren't really sure if this was going to be a series, like a sequel or a spinoff. But yeah, this was apparently ARMS, the bankrupt studio, apparently came back. Probably to fulfill their contract they already made. I don't know. I didn't look into it too much. But yeah, ARMS came back from bankruptcy just to animate 3 whole episodes for this season. Thankfully, they were all like broadcast ATX, so it's like there's no censored version of this one, and so I think that's the only reason that Crunchyroll was forced to have this on their platform, which thankfully happened. But it's based off of manga, of course. The genres are action, ecchi. Like I said before, yes, this is technically a sequel. It opens up feeling like it's not going to be a sequel because it changes focus to Chubo Sonken, who is this girl that's now going to the school that is technically the whole concept is that Three Kingdoms era warring great generals, great warriors. These kind of artifacts are kind of left behind, which kind of contains the soul and the power of those great warriors. This washes up ashore into Japan and somehow end up in the hand of a bunch of cute schoolgirls and schoolboys. And there's like this school where everybody just fights each other. And each of these different schools will fight each other. And it's basically an excuse to see these girls, hot girls, fight and shred their clothes. Let's be honest. But yes, like I said, technically in this season, Shin Ikkitousen, it opens up feeling like it's going to be something different, but it ends up being a direct sequel because Chobo goes to the same school that the main character, Hakufu Sonsaku, technically was at. And it kind of plays in this whole jokey idea that this girl is obviously the sister of her because she does legit everything that she did when she first showed up. Fight somebody, fall over, and peed herself. Which apparently is the prodigy, or the proof that they need that this is in fact her sister because she did legit the same thing that she did. So yeah, they quickly pull her in and have her take over because Sonsaku is missing. So she has to take over for her role as being the leader of their particular group. Then suddenly other schools show up to try to take their gems and they also have these weapons in this world that are the weapons of these old that are very powerful. And so they have one and they have to protect it. So, and then behind the scenes, you have this Himiko's going around killing a bunch of people and taking their artifacts. And then suddenly, in order to help save Chubo, Hakufu has to go to some place that's like at the edge of death or something like that in some random location and train there. And that's pretty much most that all happened. But yeah, it's been so long since I watched Ikkitousen, I was pretty much lost, but I had already watched 2 episodes of it, so I decided to finish it. It's kind of like one of those things. So I can't really give you any thoughts on the story stuff. Most of the time, I kind of just see it as an excuse to have these girls fight each other. Lots of rivalries, lots of girls that claim that their whole focus and future is to fight somebody else to the death. Cute ditzy girl in the middle. I think that's the reason why I like Sonsaku so much, is because she's like this super ditz character that doesn't really care about any of the story stuff. So when you go to the other characters and like there's some rivalry between them, and I'm like, sure, okay, whatever. It goes back to her, and she legit she's just dumb and she just does stuff. So she's super cute. So yeah, I still love Sonsaku. Sonken was okay. But like I said, in the end, it's just really good ecchi combat action stuff, which did fine. I think for the most part, most of the action scenes were fun. That's really all I cared. I think from what I remember of Ikkitousen, that's really all I cared about before, and that's all I was given out now. So if you're looking for dumb ecchi action, look no further. If you want anything else, you might get some crazy story in there that I'm not getting. But for the most part, it just looks like people wanting to fight over artifacts and rivalries between characters. That's really all it is. These artifacts that are going to end the world or something, probably. I don't know. But it was kind of interesting because technically with each of these girls that have these little pendants from this thing that washed ashore in Japan, the pendant themselves gives them the ability to essentially level up. And in each one of them has legit the spirit of the warrior that was from the warring periods. And so every now and then you'll see them actually come out and take over the body. And it's always kind of really weird, but at the same time, like, super overpowered. So that's the part where I think I get lost, because it technically has like a lot of name dropping, like, oh, that's this general. Oh, he's the greatest general ever, and he's actually my general, so I need to serve him. And it's like, I don't know who these people are. Just fight cute girls. just have the cute girls fight. But yeah, did you watch any of it?
Just the first episode.
Just the first episode. Good ecchi. That's
yeah,
about it.
I love it. But
yeah,
it was one of those frustrating things that ended up kind of slipping through the cracks, especially knowing that it was only 3 episodes.
And that's the troubling thing that I really have with it. It's like, if you watch Ikkitousen, sure, watch Shin Ikkitousen. If you haven't watched Ikkitousen, I guess you can watch it for the ecchi and cute girls with their clothes shedding. But at the same time, this is like 3 episodes. It doesn't really cover anything at all. It doesn't feel like there's a start. It doesn't feel like there's an end. It just feels like 3 episodes of a season. So you're not going to really get any sort of conclusion whatsoever. So that's kind of one of the struggling things of even suggesting Ikkitousen or Shin Ikkitousen unless you want to check out the manga, because I don't know if ARMS just if they just took on the name of ARMS and it's actually some different studio that just branded themselves ARMS. But it's one of those things of like, I don't know if maybe they were just hoping this would pump some money into them surviving, or again, like I said, technically trying to fulfill a contract that was left unfinished, that they were forced to finish, or if we might possibly see more coming out. But if we do technically get a Shin Ikkitousen or something, Shin Ikkitousen 2 or something, I might want to go back, and because that was my hope. But when I came into this, I was thinking it might have been like a spinoff or something like that. But now knowing that it was a sequel, I kind of wish that I went back and watched the original one before I watched Shin Ikkitousen. That way I wasn't as lost about the story stuff. But if it does get another sequel of another maybe 2 episodes, maybe I might actually go back and rewatch the entire series. So we'll see, though. That's Shin Ikkitousen. Check that out if you've watched it, or if you want to just watch some TNA. There you go. Miss Shachiku, let's get wholesome. Let's get away from Bastard and Shin Ikkitousen and all this ecchi stuff, and let's go get wholesome with some Miss Shachiku and the little baby ghost, or Shachiku-san wa Youjo Yurei ni ira yaretai. This one's streamed on Crunchyroll, ran for 12 episodes, done by Studio Production or Project Number 9. The source is a manga. The genres are comedy and supernatural. And the series composition done by Hitomi Ueno, who, of course, has done a lot of really fantastic work. Too many to list, like Noragami and Vanitas. But yeah, this one follows, as the title would lead you to believe, a Shachiku. And for those that don't know what a Shachiku is, there's a thing in Japan, kind of a rough side of Japan is these things known as black companies, which are companies that kind of overwork their employees to death and pay them very little for all that effort, no overtime, stuff like that. And people kind of just stick with it because they don't really want to leave the job and look bad or anything like that, or leave, and they kind of often get pushed into not being a burden upon your coworkers by, living with it. And the people that live with it and deal with it and push themselves through these black companies are known as Shachiku. And we follow one such Shachiku, Fushihara, and she is working really late one night when suddenly she hears a voice saying, "Leave. Leave, please leave. No, it was more like, leave. And then she's like, what the heck? And she looks around. She's alone there, so she looks around the office and she's like, where is this voice coming from? And she ends up finding this little cute baby lolly ghost that has like this little megaphone that's changing her voice to sound really haunting. And quickly, Fushihara, or the Shachiku, I don't know if you want to refer to Shachiku. They called her Shachiku the entire show.
Pretty much.
Shachiku basically goes, oh my gosh, this thing's super adorable, and then like gets energized by it, even though it keeps saying, you need to leave, you're gonna die, like this is unhealthy, you need to leave, go home, get some rest. She is energized by how like cute this thing is, and then jumps back to her desk and starts working again. And so it kind of turns this whole thing where this little baby ghost is trying to make her to leave, but she won't, and so the baby ghost tries to do things to help her be more comfortable, at least. And that kind of turns into later on where they meet a cute little ghost cat, and then later on we find out that somebody that Shachiku lives near has a cute ghost maid, that's tsundere. And yeah, later on at the very end we meet the Oni one that was in the intro. Took them forever to show that character. But yeah, your thoughts on Shachiku?
This was absolutely my healing, sugar show of every week. I absolutely did not allow myself to miss an episode of this one. This one was way
I absolutely did not.
I was practically hovering the controller waiting for this episode, each episode.
I just like how that was almost going to lead to me saying I absolutely did not let myself do this. Did not like it? No, did not let myself not watch it.
No, I absolutely love this show. If you can't tell, from the get-go, I was absolutely just fanatical about this one. It was too sugary, too much. I'm sure I had 3 diabetic comas throughout the season because of this show. Just too sweet. I love the color palettes. It did kind of get a little bit off towards the end. I actually noticed it, so I know Andrew's absolutely probably had a blast with it.
Oh my gosh, Chris getting mad.
But I still loved it. Loved the cuteness. Loved the sweetness. Yeah, just great show.
It was a very simple show. I mean, Project Number 9 wasn't trying to do something crazy here, and that's typically the case with a lot of more comedy shows. But I think they put the effort where the effort was needed, obviously making these characters look really adorable and cutesy. And I think there's something to be said about the additional effects that they added to it. I kind of equate it to Demon Girl Next Door, and how Demon Girl Next Door has like sometimes very simple like interactions between characters, but they add in those extra little sound effects and those little cue noises in the background that add a little bit extra cuteness to it. So yeah, when you have the characters walking around, you hear the little squeak, 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 or whatever. Or whenever they get excited about something, you'll have like a little glitters noise or somebody else's voice in the background going wah, wah, or something like that. The only thing that they added stuff that I didn't like was the creepy guy that goes kawaii. And like it's like half the time it would sound like really off, like oh, and I was like, oh gosh, please stop! I don't need you to tell me that it's cute. Like, I get it. I know it's like this whole idea of it's vocalizing what you're thinking of, like, oh, this is cute. And then suddenly the guy goes, yes, it's cute. And it's like, oh, please stop. That was the only thing that I found really annoying. But other than that, it was like all the audio cues and the voice cues in the background or the sound effects really did a really great job of just making a very simple, cute show that much more cuter. Like I said, again, like Demon Girl Next Door, just having those little extra sound effects that really do accent the situation. So the show itself, it was interesting because when I first did my first impressions of the series, obviously the thing that kind of hit me very heavily at the very beginning was this is kind of a heavy subject, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Skeleton Knight and Another World. This is technically a heavy subject, the idea of people being overworked, being pushed to their limits, and it's kind of making fun of it. Now, obviously the struggle that you have watching something like this is that it's making fun of it. So like I said earlier, when you have the Shachiku and she finds this baby ghost and the baby ghost says, you're going to die, you need to go home and rest, she goes, all right, 2 more hours, yes, and then rushes back to the desk. And it's like, okay, it's kind of promoting the idea of hard working. But I think what I found in the end when I watched the whole series, the thing that really stood out to me was this acknowledgement that this exists. Black companies exist, hard workers exist, and overworking exists. But I think what it was trying to do in the end, very subtly, just to get very philosophical and deep with y'all, is that it was trying to make a statement of having purpose for that and taking a break. Not that you have to just quit your job and walk home, which I'm obviously the ghost would love if Shachiku did that. Just go home and quit. But obviously this is a job that she works for. This is a job that she works hard for. But now she has purpose and she has somebody to tell her every now and then, stop and breathe. And I think that's what it was trying to get at. And this is something I go into pretty heavily with my first impressions was, is this something I've dealt with? This is something I think everybody at some point deals with. And some people more than others, obviously. Is this moment where you feel like you're at your limit. I had this moment with this entire year of working, sitting in front of this screen, a computer screen for 10 plus hours, 7 days a week, and it felt physically draining. Like, it felt like I was dying. And if only I had a little cute baby lolly ghost.
Right?
I had a Yuki, and I really do get a lot of, it's obviously there's moments where it really feels like that's what they're kind of portraying here with these cute lolly ghosts. And they come up and they put one hand on her leg or something like that. Like, it's almost like that dog that goes, woof. It says, I'm here for you. Like, not that they're, giving some great hints or actually doing your work for you, but just that I'm here kind of moment, where I kind of had with Yuki. But that's that feeling that I got from the show, was that realization that it's yes, making fun of overworking, but it's doing it in a way that makes it lighthearted to remind you just need to take breaks and you have to have a focus. You need a purpose for what you build towards. And she technically gets that purpose with these ghosts, working for that moment that she can go home and be with them, kind of thing. And I thought it was really cute. And again, like I said, not excusing it, but at the same time acknowledging it exists. And this is a thing that exists in the world. And not everybody has the option of just walking away from their jobs. So I like that it did that well. Putting that aside, putting all that deep stuff. Andrew, stop being deep about this stupid show. Yes, it is all about the lollies. And the lollies are absolutely adorable. And like I mentioned earlier, they did a really good job of portraying them and showing that cuteness and giving those little extra effects to the show to really kind of accent their cuteness. Technically acknowledging Miyako's seiyuu. I think they had some really solid seiyus here. But no, I especially when I heard Miyako and I'm like, it's Shamiko! It's Shamiko! I quickly ran over and started messaging certain people that I know that are super fans of Shamiko. And like, if you don't watch Shachiku for any reason, watch it for a cute Neko girl Shamiko. But no, I loved her to death. Like I said, I was totally blown away by when Lily went full tsundere mode. I was like, oh my gosh, we have a tsundere ghost.
Right. And
I really like it. Tan-made tsundere ghost. I thought she was going to be like a zombie or something. I thought they were going to go like a different thing for each one of them, but they just stuck with the ghost, cat, the Oni, and the rest were just ghosts. But they were all technically ghosts except for the Oni. But yeah, it was cute. Each one of the characters were fantastic. The goofy little jealousy between the ghost and the cat, where it was cute as well. Just a fun healing show that really just kind of reminds you of what's important in life. That I think is the background message they have there, on top of just being super cute. We equated a lot to Helpful Fox Senko-san. So if you watch this show and you really like it, go watch Helpful Fox Senko-san. But and if you watched if you enjoyed Senko-san, watch this show, obviously. But we were kind of equating it a lot to that. But I think Senko-san, I think they both are equally kind of background, telling a kind of a grim story, just kind of subtly saying this is a thing that exists and don't fall into it. But I think they both do very well in the idea of just having that healing effect of it, showing that healing. And yes, technically making you very jealous of the main character.
Right?
Senko-san, it was because you had a cute fox, and with this one, a bunch of cute little lollies that you just want to hug and protect their smiles. It tried to do some story with the ghosts, which I don't remember really finishing. They just kind of give you hints as to what kind of was happening with her past. Miyako's story is like, she said it wasn't true, but I'm like, that's a really depressing story. It was a really depressing story out of nowhere.
It's one of those things that you think, it seems like they do that on purpose to make it more viable, that they're happy with Shachiku. So it seems like that's what they were playing on, is the idea of, yeah, their past sucked, and that's why they're kind of,
well, yeah, definitely with the ghost. That's the way her mother always left her. Like, she's going to work, and the assumption there is that mother probably didn't make it back from home or work. But it's like, yeah, why are all these stories depressing? I'm like, don't show me any more. Don't show me Lily's history. I don't need to see any more, unless they showed it and I missed it.
It might be just past the ending.
Probably. And it was interesting because they, again, harkening back to the Demon Girl Next Door, they kind of did similar to that show, in the idea that at the very end they're like, oh yeah, by the way, story. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess. we're gonna have actual story behind all this stuff. But I mean, nothing like Demon Girl Next Door went hard on the ending story for the first season. This one was kind of just an excuse to kind of go over here. Okay, let's do that. But yeah. Anywho, that's Miss Shachiku and the Little Baby Ghosts. If you are overworked and just need some comfort, I think you can relate with Shachiku and get some healing from some cute little baby ghosts and keep it together. Again, take breaks and find purpose, I think is an important thing there. Date A Live, Season 4. We was streaming on Crunchyroll, ran for 12 episodes. They already have a 5th season confirmed. Studio is Geek Toys, which I think is like the 3rd studio for this franchise, or maybe the 2nd one. But yeah, Geek Toys is taking over. Source is a light novel. Genres are comedy, romance, sci-fi. And it's just basically about these spirits show up that cause disasters. And there's this group known as the Ratatosker, I can never say their name, that goes out and stops them. And they end up employing Shido, who apparently his sister works for the organization. He never knew before. And Shido has got like a special ability to be able to seal away the power of these spirits. So normally the other organizations will come in and destroy the spirits. This other organization that his sister works for actually wants to seal away the spirits so that way he can save them. And so the whole thing is that he has to go out on dates with these spirits, like make them chill out, take them out on the date, make them like him, and then he can kiss them and seal away their powers. And that's been going on for 4 seasons now. And there is a lot of girls. It said like at the end there was like 11 spirits total, I think, right now.
I tried to count them a couple times.
It's a lot. A lot of girls.
And it's fine, except for whenever they try to force all of them to say
in a
something.
run room.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. We're having the cheerdanshi issue now, where it's like you have this room full of 10 plus people, and every time something happens, the characters start sliding in, like these stills slide in with the characters going, "Oh, I think this. Oh, I think this too. I think this too. I think this too. I think this too." Please stop. Just stop. They don't all have to respond. But yeah, the main focus in this episode or this particular season is that we got the introduction of 2 new spirits technically. And then towards the last 2 episodes, I think it was just 2 episodes, suddenly out of nowhere, we're like, oh, let's tell Kurumi's backstory. So that was kind of the significance of this season, I think. Plus, at the same time, the getting into
the spirit of origin.
West Guy. Well, yeah, the spirit of origin, Westcott inverting.
And the inversions.
The powers that can be gained by Westcott by inverting them. His strong desire to invert them all. That way he can still... The idea is that semi spoilers here, if they can invert them, there's a way that he knows to capture their power, and so he wants them all inverted at this point. So, or at least according to like the 2nd episode. So yeah, and that's again, yeah, getting into Kurumi really gets into a lot of the spirit origin stuff. And yeah, the big shock, by the way, this character you've known all along is this thing at the very end, which I went, sure, whatever.
The stupid thing about that was that that character, I was going to say this, and when I actually got into, for a lack of a better term, my review, is the fact that it was so obvious that they were going to put her as the spirit of origin, because it was like they were slowly bringing
suddenly
this character.
Somebody's very important.
Yeah, suddenly this character is becoming more and more prominent in the story, and it was like, you are so setting her up for something. And when they started talking about okay,
oh yeah, by the way, I had this person that I was with a long time ago. You had a relationship before, okay? Who are you again? Oh yeah, you're one of the girls that shows up. Anyway,
it's funny because with that, and I did it like the one of the characters I did like. And the other one was okay. I kind of like her, but she was not. I didn't much care for her. The way they were playing off of her cutesy versus, for lack of a better term, yandere-ish side. I didn't much care for that, but she was all right. She is fine.
You're talking about Muku.
Yes. I kind of liked her, but she didn't work per se in some situations. So Yeah, and yes and no. I was 50-50 on her. But the other character I did like. I think her frustration with her dealing with her problem, for lack of a better term, if you want to call it the 2D versus 3D-ish problem.
I was mixed on that. At first, I didn't like it, but they did something fun with it.
Yeah. So I liked that per se. And I think that was decently well done. But Kurumi, I did actually really like that. I think that getting into her background was absolutely so... Finally, I got an answer to a lot of those questions. And that's why when Andrew had mentioned that he was asking my thoughts on the season or something like that, and I mentioned that it finally got into Kurumi. I don't know that her backstory is going to save her for you, but when it comes down to it, I think it was solid. On my part, I liked it. I thought it was really fantastic in getting into a lot of that and explaining and introducing the spirit of origin and how that needed to be done. So yeah, I really did like this season. I thought it got into a lot of stuff that just finally needed to be handled.
Yeah, I think for the most part, this season was pretty shrug. I obviously there's 3 arcs. There's Nia's arc, Muku's arc, and then Kurumi's arc and the spirit origin. But Nia, I liked her introduction in the earlier segments. I kind of like her whole mischievous nature, like writing in her book to force him to flip up her skirt, stuff like that. I did enjoy that, but like I said, I there was a lot of the whole 2D versus 3D things for the conquering aspect that was kind of shrug for me. But it was still kind of fun in the end. As for Muku, yeah, I kind of agree with the idea. It's one of those things of like, it was an interesting concept. It is a lot of these kind of harem stories love their everybody forgets you arc, and that was how they did it for this particular one. Was Muku was the way to do their how does everybody forget you arc, and what do you feel like being forgotten aspect, which I think was fine. It didn't really do much in the end, but I do enjoy her in the end. But yeah, getting into the more serious stuff with Kurumi and stuff like that, that's where things a little get more. Technically, we'd have the inversing stuff with Nia, which is obviously important as well for the story. I don't recall them ever bringing up the inverting before, but apparently they've inverted several at this point that I've completely forgotten about. Apparently origami. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's been so long. There's a lot of the story stuff, and I thought for some reason the inverting was new here, and apparently it's not. But that stuff's still kind of interesting, but at the same time, it's one of those things where I think when they first had the inverting kind of showing up with this season, I was like, that would be kind of interesting to see each one of them do their inverting, but it's like, they technically put a stipulation on there where don't expect this to happen again. So if they keep doing it, then I'm going to be very it's going to kind of break that whole aspect of, it's kind of like the character that says, I can only do this 3 times before he'll kill me, and they do it like 15 times. I don't know if they'll stick with their rules they've kind of established. As for Kurumi's story, I enjoyed it. It was fine. It was one of the more interesting storylines for this series so far. I don't know that it excuses the whole aspect of killing people on a regular basis, that she's kind of a mass murderer. But in the end, yes, it explains her story and how she had to kill people. But that's probably the more interesting stories of this series so far, honestly. Typically, it's always kind of, here's a spirit, here's their quirk, he conquers them, and then they become side characters. The problem that I've always had with Day Day Live is I think it has a problem with too many characters, and it keeps adding too many characters. Every season adds at least 2 or 3 characters, and we're at a point now where there's so much saturation with characters that you have the room full of harems issue where everybody has to respond to everything, and they're nothing but responders, and they don't really do anything themselves. Day Day Life typically will have these moments where they'll try to slide characters in to make them important again, like with Origami, Origami having that whole, okay, suddenly she's important again, and now let's explain her story. I think a couple of characters have had that for their story, which is kind of nice, but for the most part, there's just too many characters. There's too many characters, and I struggle with that aspect a lot, but in the end, every now and then it kind of pulls out these really cool stories now and then, even though overall it's just kind of a dumb harem show in the end, which honestly, I think in its purest harem moments, I think it's boring.
It is one of those things. It's like yeah, I want to go back and watch and I probably will at some point when all is said and done. I'll probably go back and watch it because I did really enjoy this show at the beginning. Not because I liked its take on the harem aspect of going and starting the quote unquote date and throwing out these absolutely goofy answers to these questions. That when they tried to do that again, when they're doing that in the last few characters, it's been like that joke is rubbed off and it doesn't work anymore. That joke absolutely has failed miserably. And it's one of those things that I remember that was the reason why I liked it. And now I hate that aspect. Does that make sense?
You know what's funny is, am I the only one that feels like Shido's character like changed for some reason when they went to Kurumi's story? Like suddenly he's being like super snarky and stuff. I'm like, wait, this is like a dumb blank slate protagonist character that gets gung-ho about protecting people every now and then. Why does he suddenly have a really weird character when he's around Kurumi and dating her? It felt so off. Like, wait, he's being snarky, he's being kind of combative with her kind of obviously yandere teasiness that she has. I'm like, who the hell is this character? I was half expecting them to suddenly reveal that Shido was like altered in some way, because it did not feel like him as a character.
I thought that was what the whole point of the alternate story was about, was that those two characters merged.
But they never did that before, though. Like Nia, Muku, all of them, they never did it before.
No, right, because it didn't happen until this season.
What do you mean?
The Storyland, the extra version of Shido, and they merged.
I guess they've never really had him act differently, except for that date. That's my problem.
Right. The last two was after that Storyland, and that's when he started acting different.
Only the date, though. He never acted differently outside of the date with Kurumi. Okay. Any interaction with characters outside of that date, he was normal Shido, I guess. Okay. But I guess that could explain it, though. I mean, I'm not going to put that against it. But yeah, there you go. it's a daily life is still a thing. It's always been an enjoyable show in the end. It's not a bad show, but I think it, like I said before, I think when it gets too big on having the harem involved with everything, I think it gets real lost and just muddied. But it's like every character is always like great in their own art, I think, or in their own right. I think obviously the biggest draw that I had with the first season, I love the character designs. Like I love all the character designs. That was my initial pull. I bought figures before I even watched the show. That's how much I enjoy the character designs. And I think they still have that knack of creating really great character designs. It's just, again, having them be involved with everything really is where the show gets really weighed down, because, again, there's too many characters at this point. So it would do well if they would figure out some excuses just to kind of separate them now and then. Have a moment where it's just, Yoshino's in the room. You don't have to have all of them in the room. Every room is humongous because they somehow all fit in it every time there's an interaction. So there you go.
Merge / accept another side of himself. I don't know what exactly happened, but that part became him. So
yeah, what would tell that he was more snarky?
It was so convoluted. That some of these storylines become so convoluted.
Yeah, that's the struggle they have. Sometimes I'm like, did I forget this, or is this overly convoluted, or is this trying for something that I'm missing already? It's very simple in the end, though. Daily Life Season 4.
That's the one thing about Kurumi that I can't stand is her time element. So
that was the thing with Kurumi. I've always enjoyed her character design. I don't like her character design in her normal outfit with the whole like, I don't know, the hair over the eye thing. She looks
well. I like the
outcast geek girl, I guess. I've never cared for that look, but the other form that was with them in that one room, I really liked that outfit. That was really cute. The one that she shot at, I thought that one was cute. Anywho, but yeah, I'm fine with her. Like I said, I think the only thing I've ever had a hang up with Kurumi was that it just kind of shrugs over the fact that she just mass murders people in the back alleys because they're mean to Cat, and thus they have to die, like literally die. Is always kind of what? Okay, I guess we're just gonna ignore the fact that she just murdered like 3 people. I know Cat, save Cat, but not murder 3 people just because they were mean to Cat. Love after World Domination. Let's move forward. Or Koi wa Sekai Seifuku no Ato de. This one's streamed on Crunchyroll for 12 episodes, done by Studio Project number 9. Sources of manga and genres comedy and romance. And this follows a bunch of Power Rangers, and one of the Power Rangers, the main red Power Ranger, he falls in love with Desmi, a bad guy character, and then gets her off to the side and asks her to date with her, and so they have to keep their relationship a secret from everybody because they're technically from the opposite sides of the combat, the battlefield. There you go. Your thoughts?
Okay, I'm gonna be kind of blunt on this one. This is the Desmi show. I literally and absolutely watched this show strictly for one character. And in some ways, I hate that I have to say that. And in other ways, I kind of, I hate that I have to say this. Because literally, this show is goofy and fun. There's a lot of aspects to this that is like Fudo is this kind of charmingly fun doof and
musclehead.
He's a musclehead, and I do like him as a kind of just something that gives Desmi her reason to be in love. But unfortunately, the show kind of follows him in most ways because he is the main character and he is doting on Desmi. But take into consideration what I'm literally saying is literally Fudo is giving Desmi a reason to have this character that is doting on her. That's literally the entire show. But take into consideration the love after World Domination. That's the name of the show. This is a love story between these 2 characters that are literally star-crossed lovers in every way, shape, or form. And so this is kind of a double-edged sword. Desmi is cute in every way, shape, or form. I'm finding my excuses to get screenshots. A couple of the other folks on the Discord, they're feeding me screenshots of this show because literally Desmi is just an absolute adorable character and I love her to death. But on the frustration side is literally everything I'm telling you is about this love story between Fudo and Desmi because Desmi is cute. So all of the other stories that are in this kind of fall to the wayside. There is a couple of interesting tidbits. One of the characters in the bad guy side falls in love with another character, and it's a play on tropes involved with the Super Sentai genre, and there is a lot of those tropes that they're kind of playing with, but it's all outshadowed by Desmi is cute, and everything else is, okay, I guess I see your joke there. I see this joke there that you're doing. So take that into consideration. I did enjoy Desmi. That's it.
Okay. Love after World Domination. Check that out if Desmi sounds good. That was kind of the problem that I ran into is it's like, I understand the idea of your desire to watch the show sometimes is kind of driven just by your love of one character. And that was the case for me. I think that, Desmi is cute, but at the same time, it wasn't enough for me because like you were mentioning, a lot of the focus is on Fudo being a meathead and him trying to figure out, well, what do I do on date? Oh, I do this. Okay, I'll do that on date. And that stuff wasn't really enough for me, unfortunately. So too much of the outside stuff was kind of move. So it's fine though. Love after World Domination. Check that out if that's interesting to you. All right, moving on to Spy X Family, or as the prudes want to say, it's Spy Family. You don't say the X, even though they wrote it in there. This one streamed on Crunchyroll ran for 12 episodes. Of course, they have a second part that will be airing in fall, which will have the remaining 13 episodes. But for now, we have part 1. And this is being done by Studio Wit Studio and Cloverworks. They took turn on the episodes, one doing odds and one doing evens. Sorts as a manga. Genres are action comedy. The music was done by No Name. The director was Kazuhiro Furuhashi, who's done Rurouni Kenshin, Dororo, and Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn. And of course, the creator behind this one is Tatsuya Endo, who has been known for doing assistant work with Tatsuki Fujimoto, who did Chainsaw Man. But yeah, this one follows a guy known as Twilight. He is this secret spy that works for this organization, whose whole kind of thing that they were kind of focusing on, at least at the beginning of the show itself, is that they're trying to keep peace between these two neighboring nations, Westalis and Ostania. And even though there is peace between these two nations, there are people that want to at least get gain or want to cause conflict between the two of them. So again, Twilight is kind of usually hired to go out and find information on people and stop them from creating war between these two nations. And as we open up the show, Twilight is given his next mission, which is Operation Strix. And this whole operation is that he has to go acquire a wife and a child and get that child into this one academy. Because as we kind of find out, this guy named Donovan Desmond that pretty much runs this academy, he's working behind the scenes possibly to start war. And the only time that he ever goes public, apparently, or at least goes to gatherings, is during these kind of parent-teacher moments with the highest, what they call Stellas. The highest ranking children of the school that get enough of these merit badges will become a Stella, and the family for them can meet at these meetings. And so he has to get a child, have that child be a Stella, and then go meet Donovan. So starts his whole adventure. He goes immediately to acquire a child from an orphanage, which is Anya, and come to find out, Anya quickly realizes that he's doing this for a secret spy mission because she can read minds, apparently. And then later on, as he ends up bumping into this one lady at this tailor place, ends up kind of making an agreement with her. Come to find out, she's an assassin, and she becomes his temporary wife. As we kind of find out, the Yor, which is this lady that he becomes his wife, is actually somebody that's a secretly assassin, but at the same time does not want to worry her brother. So. And also the secret police are kind of cracking down on people that are kind of older women that don't have husbands. Kind of gives them makes them a little bit more suspicious. So she wants to both help her brother, not worry about her, plus not have her get caught by the secret police. She decides to kind of go along with helping now Lloyd, not Twilight, get his daughter into this academy by acting like his wife. So. Yeah, shenanigans unfold, like I said before, between this whole idea of a mind reader, an assassin, and a spy. And none of them know each other's secret, except for Anya knows everybody's secret, but doesn't want to say anything. So, your thoughts on Spy Family?
I generally love this show. My biggest problem probably for me, and understand that this is I do really love this show.
Starting with the problems.
Yeah, my biggest problem is literally none of the jokes really hit for me. And I think that's probably... everybody has... We've talked about several times. Everybody has their own comedy that hits for them. This one, unfortunately, didn't work for me as far as its comedy. I think the only episode where I was rolling on the floor as far as laughing at this episode was... one of the characters and his obsession with everything elegant. And that was absolutely the funniest show or episode that I've seen in a long time of just rolling. I laughed so hard during that episode, but that's one episode.
Didn't laugh at the grin. Jeez.
No, I mean, I seen where a lot of the humor was supposed to be. It just, it didn't hit for me. It's one of those that, I mean, the only other one that was probably anywhere close was maybe
Twilight Anya. God, Chris is heartless.
I love Anya. I love Yor. I mean,
Anya pointing out all the absurdity of the museum art.
When the Yuri was probably the closest other one that was probably kind of funny for me, but when it comes down to it, the humor didn't hit. Other than that, the show was very, I think Andrew in one of his videos had mentioned its wholesomeness, and in a lot of ways that this is a very wholesome show with some of the things that they were doing, where Lloyd realizes, or doesn't realize, but he is doing special things for Anya to make her feel more more included in the family. And a lot of these things really do kind of hit well, of these really cool moments that Anya trying to be more trying really hard to do things to make Lloyd's mission work, and in some strange ways it's really just kind of cute and sweet that she's trying to do these things. Becky accepting Anya as a friend. Damien,
Twilight Anya. God, Twilight Anya.
Anyway, when it comes down to it, I really do love this show. Humor didn't really hit for me, but that's not that big of a deal.
Oof. I didn't think Chris was going to be so harsh on this show. I think the problem really in that, I think probably lies in the idea. I think this show is kind of 45% wholesome family, 45% comedy, and then like 10% action. And I think it does really well to kind of balance those, even though sometimes I had this moment where I realized, oh yeah, this show isn't just comedy action. There is something else to this show. And it was one of my episode impressions where I'm like, this wasn't necessarily a funny episode. And I'm like, well, I think that's probably because it dawned on me at that point, this is not going to be a full-on comedy show. This is going to be a family / comedy / action show. And when I realized that every episode I really loved. And I think that really does come down to really fantastic chemistry. This kind of quirk that this writer created is just, it's full of possibilities that they can do with this whole thing. And again, you technically having on Lloyd's end, he is a secret spy, so obviously sometimes he'll do things that's going to rub the wrong people wrong, and suddenly he has to explain to Yor to cover it up. Oh, these guys chasing me are some of my he's claiming that he's a psychiatrist. These are some of my patients that are having an episode. And so Yor kind of just goes along with it. Like, oh, well, that's terrible. What should we do? And then she actually knocks out one of them and goes, I'm sorry, I hit one of your patients. He's like, no, that's good. You did fine. And then when on your side, her talking constantly about how she's really good at cleaning and stuff, but technically that's the only thing that she's good at. She's terrible at cooking, obviously, because she's a perfect waifu. She has to be bad at something. Her constantly being very good at cleaning things or teaching Anya how to defend herself or play dodgeball in ways that only a extremely powerful assassin would be able to know how to do, or her assassin techniques coming into play when she gets a little bit too tipsy. And her covering that up is cute. And then obviously Anya being very childlike, knowing everybody's secret, getting that information that there's something going on, but not really knowing what to do with it because, yes, Anya's a child. And so she does seem to think about things in a very juvenile way. Usually when she hears that something dangerous is happening, she goes waku waku and knows that it's some spy thing and it's very exciting, but she doesn't know what to do with it. Oh, the secret police are possibly here. Waku waku, what is that? That sounds really cool, but I don't know what that is. It's the Waku Waku show. It's really great chemistry between the three of these, and that always turns into some really fantastic stuff comedy-wise, and again, kind of juggling the characters have to do. That's really kind of interesting, but at the same time, always kind of hinting every now and then about the idea of, although this is a fake family, although it's only for circumstances that benefits everybody, Anya gets parents. She never has parents, so she gets a benefit. Lloyd needs this for his mission. It's a benefit to him. Yor needs this to cover up from the secret police and cover her identity. She gets a benefit. Each one of them gets a benefit that was pre-established when they joined together, but the wholesomeness comes in them realizing the importance. Obviously, very quickly, Anya is already seeing these two as her parents. She's already established that. But you don't necessarily get that with Yor and Lloyd. Yor's always kind of struggling with the idea that, is she doing a good job? Is she really important here? Learning about how to take care of people. At the same time, she's already had the experience with her brother. Lloyd, on the other hand, is, yes, kind of equating Anya to himself, and the idea that his whole purpose of doing this job and being a spy was to prevent what happened to him in the past never to happen again. Never to see a child cry and alone like he was once. But then at the same time, realizing at some point he's got to be the ideal father, and then realizing to trust people more is, I think, the key thing there. He's always been for himself, but now he has to... It's his ultimate challenge, because he's always worked for himself, and now he suddenly has to rely on other people to do his job, and that's kind of a struggle for him as well. It's just really great chemistry, and I really love the characters. And for me, all the comedic beats, when they are getting comedic, really hit for me. And I think that's a lot to do with Anya's reaction to stuff, and that's really the core for most of the comedy is Anya's reaction. Anya reacting to things. And yes, pretty much all the Academy stuff was really excellent because technically that's always Anya involved, so it works. And so many fantastic moments in this series. Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think the entrance to the Academy was easily probably the funniest moment of the series because it's just bonkers. Suddenly cows are showing up and we're pressure point knocking out things and the guys freaking out about how elegant they're doing things. That was easily one of the better episodes, but there's still a lot of them outside of that, like the dodgeball game, which was fantastic. I love the first parent-teacher/daughter meeting, which is the interview scene, which I thought was just one of the best scenes. It was just so good. Unfortunately, seeing Anya cry, but seeing, again, that nature within Lloyd and Yor seeping out, even though they're all strangers to each other, realizing what's important in that brief moment. There's just some really fantastic moments. Yeah, the grin was hilarious. The punch was hilarious. The dodgeball, Twilight Anya. There's so many great moments throughout the series. And like I said, I think it all culminates to the idea that they have a great balance of wholesome comedy and just these little shenanigans that come from them all trying to keep secrets from each other. So the only thing I would personally give a negative for is very anticlimactic for this first part. They didn't have like some big shebang moment at the very end of this core, but again, that's because this is technically one full season and we only have the first half of it. I was just kind of hoping that they would have something at the end to kind of bookend it before we have to wait, 3 months for the next season to come out. But that's fine. I'll be patient. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I think it looks fantastic. Cloverworks and Wit Studio did a really phenomenal job. So I'll look forward to them working together again, hopefully for the second half. But yeah. And I think the other negative is that they teased the dog and the dog didn't show up. They teased the dog for like a brief moment. I thought they were going to show the dog, and it does look like based on the PV that they gave for the second part, things are going to start ramping up a lot. So I'll be very curious to that because technically, adding another negative, the only other negative I can really give is that you don't really get to see Yor in action. They finally at some point towards the later part reference the idea that she had to do some killing the night before, but it's like you never get to see Yor doing her job. Yes, you get to see her beat the crap out of people that threaten Anya every now and then, which is really great. Like I said, the moment that she got tipsy that one time and started fighting somebody in particular was really great, but you don't really get to see her like doing her job, which is kind of a little bit of letdown. But yeah, Yor is like perfect waifu material, despite the fact that she can't cook. But yeah, Anya's adorable and must be protected at all times. Loving what they're doing with Damien too. I'll be curious to see what they end up doing with Damien in the end, because he's obviously already having conflicting thoughts. Oh, Yuri. I think Yuri was probably my only character I did not like. I think that whole siscon thing that he had going on was a little bit overboard. So hopefully they can get him to chill down, because otherwise any scene that he's going to be in, I'm probably going to be a little bit off put by. So yep, that's my thoughts on Spy X Family or Spy Family. Definitely looking forward to part 2 in the fall. But yeah, there you go. Check that out if that's interesting to you. Don't Hurt Me, My Healer, a Chrono Healer Mendok Sai. This one streamed on Crunchyroll, ran for 12 episodes, done by Studio Jumondo. The source is a manga. The genres are adventure, comedy, fantasy, and the series composition by Fumihiko Shimo, who did Dragon Maid, bottom tier character Tomazaki, Talentless Nana, Bofuri, and Golden Time. And this one takes place in a RPG fantasy type setting. It kind of opens up like half the episodes with this, oh, by the way, let's tell you this again, that every world there exists warriors and adventurers, and they all need healers that support them. And then it jumps into the characters, which is Alvin. Alvin is an adventurer. He's a warrior, and the opening is fighting a bear. And then at some point, this girl named Kara, who is a healer, walks by, and he's like, hey, can you support me? Give me some heals and stuff. And she's like, normally people get on their knees and beg. And he's like, what the heck? And they start arguing about the expectations of a healer to heal somebody, and the idea that you always assume that a healer is going to take time to heal you. And eventually the bear's like, hey, guys, chill. like it literally goes, hey, guys, you really shouldn't be fighting. It's not a good thing. But what kind of comes from this kind of interaction is that Carla, in supporting him, uses a spell on him that ends up being a curse, which essentially forces them to have to be within a certain range of each other. Otherwise, Alvin will die. So it kind of forces Alvin to have to make a party with Carla, even though she's a extremely dysfunctional healer. And the two of them adventure together while Carla claims that Alvin's a terrible, weak person, and Alvin claims that she's not a healer. Your thoughts?
This show was, for lack of a better term, pretty disappointing. I had a really hard time with the first few episodes, and being truly honest, I really did. About the only thing that I kind of enjoyed out of this show was pretty much the off characters and Carla. Carla is an absolute dork. Her deadpan humor, the snarky attitude is absolutely probably the best thing about this show.
It's really the only content of this show because everything is about her comments. So you must have really loved this show because Alvin has zero character. I did actually get, like I said, a lot of the off characters were kind of funny in a lot of cases. One in particular, the highlight of the show was literally a moe cutesy light necromancer, which was exactly the opposite of this dark, sinister healer, which was Carla. So they're two contrasting each other, and their episode was absolutely by far the highlight of the show. The rest of the show, the humor was really hit and miss for me. Like I said, a lot of the side characters were really the thing that kind of, if the side character hit, it hit really well. If it didn't, it just fell flat on its face, and you kind of almost slogged through that particular humorous, for lack of a better term, interchange until the next character, which was the next episode. They did have a thief, which was kind of moe and very unsure of how they were going to deal with things, and that was kind of fun. She always flubbed her intro.
She flubbed her intro, absolutely. We had the mimic was okay. Each one of them brought their own kind of flavor, and it did. This is one thing that I will give this show, if anything, is when I say that they literally are, each episode was introducing a different off character. It literally is that way. So one episode was like I said, the necromancer. Then the next episode might be the mimic. The next episode might be the thief. And like I said, it really does come down to, does the chemistry work for that episode? If it does at the beginning, you're almost going to see that chemistry work through the entire episode. Unfortunately, the next episode is going to be either another character or and will that character work? So take that for what it is. I like I said, I generally am kind of more warmer on this show than not, because I did like Carla. Alvin, his joke is literally the mediocre, not even the mediocre. He's so bad at his job, he's negative, effectively. So take that for what it is. Everybody else is not going to be a threat because they all see him as not a threat, and they end up actually helping him more than they actually go against him. So take that for what it is. Like I said, I generally like it, but when it comes down to it, some episodes are very sluggish.
I think the problem I have with the show is it is extremely boring. This was an extremely boring show. It started out strong. It was a really funny idea. This is kind of my argument that I make a lot, where it feels like sometimes anime being based on a source material always has like that really solid opening because they made this first volume that was hilarious, and then they didn't know what to do with it after that. Like they had a really cool idea and they put it to paper and they gave it to a publisher and they said, that's hilarious, let's print it. Okay, give us the next volume or the next chapter. And they're like, let's do it again. Like, let's do the joke again. Let's keep doing the joke where Carla says that Alvin is weak as hell. Alvin is mad that she says that, and then says that she's a terrible healer, and then she does the fingers on the eye and winks thing. It's that over and over again. It was hilarious the first time, and then it just felt like the writer really had nothing else to go with. It seems like it kind of morphs a little bit into the idea that, yes, with this whole idea of this bear being really nice in the end, oh, let's make all the bad guys, or all the monsters of this world technically are good people in the end. And yes, technically all the humans in the end are the bad guys. But it kind of just turns in that being the joke, and that's the joke the entire show. And it's repetitive as all get. They had maybe a moment here and there where suddenly out of nowhere I'm like, oh, that was kind of funny. I just wasn't ready for it, so I didn't laugh for a minute there. But I guess, yeah, if I rewatched that, I got a kick out of that. Like the whole idea of him asking for a rope to get out of the pit, and she's like, oh, where am I going to find a rope? Let me go find some intestines. He's like, well, you're going to find intestines, but you're not going to find a rope. That absurdity every now and then was kind of a quick chuckle, but for the most part, it's kind of just a very repetitive show. It just has one joke, which is Carla's terrible healer, and she criticizes Alvin for being a weak warrior, and that's most of the show. I agree that every now and then they'll insert a side character for a couple minutes that sometimes adds a new spice to it. I thought the Medusa thing, turning him into stone over and over again, was kind of funny, but at the same time, they never have legs to go very long. I think my earlier moments of watching the show, I was like, okay, this show just needs an injection of a third wheel. Like this, Carla and Alvin cannot exist alone. They're not funny alone. They need somebody else to inject a new concept. And so you would have those brief moments of, okay, here's suddenly out of nowhere a mushroom. The mushroom's going to do something to add. Now we're back to the same joke. Okay, a necromancer shows up. Okay, necromancer, please add something to this joke. Okay, we got some. Okay, now we're back to the same joke again. It does not have legs, and this writer doesn't seem to have, I don't know, the writer is good at creating a moment, but never either circling back like typically you get with comedy, or know how to really give it legs for multiple lines than just, the intro. So that's I wanted to enjoy the show. I'm similar to Chris. I wanted to enjoy the show. It didn't in the end for me. None of it really worked. And I think the thing that made me want to enjoy it is because, yeah, the intro is, if you've ever played a co-op type game that has a healer class in it, you kind of get this idea of understanding both sides. From Alvin's perspective, you're like, gosh, I wish this healer was a little bit better. They're kind of bad at their job. And then from Carla's side, that gosh, I'm playing as a healer right now, and people are whispering me saying, "Come heal me," or somebody gets mad because I rode on my mount by them and they died a little bit later, and so they claim that I ignored that they were dying, and the expectations that they have for me to heal them at every breaking moment. That stuff again, that was what kind of made me this could be funny. This could totally play off of those tropes, but in the end, it never really did. It honestly never did, because it was always stuck on that. Alvin's weak, Carla's criticizing him, and Carla's a terrible healer. Or you can argue probably not a healer. You could argue there's very little indication that she has any healing capability, that she's something else. But yeah, there you go. That's Don't Hurt Me, My Healer, or Kono Healer Mendokusai. Definitely a, and I think when we came to the season, I had this thought process that this could be funny, but there was a side of me that was kind of expecting that it probably wouldn't be. But there you go. Check that out if that's interesting to you, though. Birdie Wing, Golf Girl's Story, or Birdie Wing, Golf Girl's Story, apparently is the Japanese title, which I didn't realize. This one's streamed on Crunchyroll, ran for 13 episodes. They already have a second season confirmed, done by Studio Bandai Namco Pictures. Sources original, genres are sports. And the series composition by Yosuke Kuroda, who did My Hero Academia Alternative, Gun Gale Online, Trigun, and Big Windup. And this one opens up following a girl named Eve, and she kind of she basically makes money to kind of support this one bar where they have a bunch of orphan children by doing different random jobs, like bets, that these big rich people will have these bets over golf games, and she'll go in there and do a bet and make some money and come back and help them out with the bar. And at some point, she ends up running into a girl named Aoi, who is actually a professional golfer, and the two of them kind of have a quick fooling of playing a golf game, but they kind of get interrupted, so they kind of make a promise to play a game together someday, because the two of them challenge each other. Nobody ever finds anybody that can kind of challenge Eve, or Eve can never find somebody to kind of challenge her. So she found challenge in Aoi. At the same time, Aoi found Eve's methods and stuff a little bit interesting, and again challenged her as well. So the two of them kind of hit it off, and so they want to play together again. This eventually leads to Eve joining a competition through questionable means of getting into the competition just so that she can play again against Aoi and have that experience again. So your thoughts? And Yakuza, golf Yakuza, and VR and underground golf games with morphing platforms.
This one actually was one of the folks on Discord actually kind of really wanted us to get our thoughts on this, and I was absolutely surprised at how much I enjoyed this. This is one of those that I think we seen a PV on it a while back, and I mixed it up with another girls golf show that came out a season or two ago. And that one was like, it didn't do it. And this one was actually the one that we had seen, and where you have this girl who was really powerful, and this other character who was obviously more about technique, and the kind
elegance.
of the elegance, yeah. and the two of them merging together would make a really fantastic team. And so I was kind of like, yeah, that idea was kind of interesting, kind of want to watch it, but it wasn't really top on my list because I'm not big on golf. So jumping into this, I was absolutely very much surprised. The shonen aspect of this show really works really fantastically on it. I love the kind of, because it really does hit heavy on the Eve being absurdly overpowered in when she does hit with her power. It gets kind of absurd. I mean,
she's brute forcer.
Yeah, and she's shooting between as a train's going by. She's shooting so specifically perfect that she goes right through the middle of two cars,
or breaking a branch of a tree.
Yeah, or breaking the branch of a tree. There's absurdity in it, and it's okay. That makes it actually kind of entertaining for me. Some of the superpowers that some of the characters later on have, it does get kind of absurd in that respect. But when it comes down to it, it's all quote unquote believable per se. It's not so overwhelmingly absurd. Like nobody's doing
no scorching ping pong girls where you're creating tornadoes on the platform.
And so I've actually really enjoyed myself watching this. There is this aspect, like Andrew had mentioned, there is this underground golfing tournament, and I did really like that. But the unfortunate part is, when we get into the overworld, for lack of a better term, the real world, the public tournament, it's starting to lose its flavor per se. And this is one of my frustrations. I believe it feels like, because of the fact that they've introduced the underground tournament, it seems only likely that they're going to drag Eve and probably Aoi back into the underground tournament. But as it stands right now, the public tournament, yes, per se, but it's not the same. Some of the characters are, like I said, they have their own powers, but the flair is not there as much. So I'm in this kind of neutral area where they are right now. At the end of the show, I'm neutral on the show, but I'm still holding out that they're probably going to go back into the underground, which was very, very interesting and fun. And I mean, like Andrew mentioned, they completely randomized golf course because unlimited money. So why the heck not? So I do I'm going to keep watching because I am hot on it because of all that stuff. And the idea that they might go back to that is exciting. And I do want to see that. So that's where I'm at. I am very much enjoying the show.
That's pretty much what I say when I was doing my first impressions. The only thing that was really kind of grabbed me was the idea of Eve and Rose, female Sephiroth, Eve and Rose, and the idea of the backside of everything, the bets and stuff like that, doing stuff on the back end of things. But at the same time, I really enjoyed Eve and Aoi's chemistry, because the quirk around Aoi was that she's like infectious. Her attitude is infectious, and obviously with somebody like Eve who kind of sees it kind of as a chore. She's gonna come here. She's gonna do her, shoot the ball a couple times. The only time Eve is ever really kind of at her peak is when she's challenged. So she often does things purposely just to put herself behind. That way, it forces her to go even a stretch further. And so Aoi, with her infectious nature, is the first person to really kind of throw Eve off, and that's what kind of piques Eve's interest. So I really did enjoy at least the beginning parts of that chemistry. It just seemed like when I seen the whole randomizing platforms and the Viper Lady, and then the next episode was a VR game, that's where I kind of went, maybe I'll get back to this, and I never did. So, but that's fine. I might get back into it at some point just to get caught up for the second season. But I don't know. It's just one of those ones where it's like, amongst everything else, probably gonna put this aside. It never happens. So, Birdie Wing Golf Girl Story. Check that out if that's interesting to you. Kaginado Season 2. This one streamed on High Dive, ran for 12 episodes. They're 4-minute shorts. It was done by Litle Films and Litle Films Kyoto Studio. The source is original, and the genres are comedy. Well, it's not really original. It's got the character. It's an original story, but it's got characters from pretty much every single key franchise. So if you're a fan of, Air TV, Clannad, Little Busters, Angel Beats, all these different key studio visual novels / anime adaptations, they're all your favorite characters from those shows, all thrown in one big school, kind of like similar to Isekai Quartet. So yeah, not too much to talk about here. We're probably gonna be a broken record for the first season, but your thoughts on the second season?
The one thing that I will say about this is you could probably get away with the first season not watching a lot of these. The second season, absolutely no. Because I will say the first season, no, not unless you've watched all of them, because literally the first episode spoils every show's ending. True. And this one to me was even heavier on the spoilers. And this was, I mean, literally the entire joke of like 3 or 4 of the episodes was literally you're knowing everything about what they're doing, because they're literally saying heroin is a certain type of heroin is right here. Why is this certain type of heroin here? So I love it.
They had a heroin pajama party, and that was hilarious. It was hilarious because it was playing off of the group that thought that they were the heroine, but they weren't.
Yep.
And this whole idea of being jealous, but then realizing, do you really want to be the heroine? Do you really want to? I mean, they did that multiple times this season. Was like this moment of them acknowledging, yeah, kind of sucks for the heroines. Like somebody literally says, "Is that like a requirement?"
The quote unquote getting to the beach episode and playing heavy on Little Busters. That was
so mean. That was so mean. They're just so like the entire time in a bus not liking this.
There was so many just absolute stabs at the I mean, we made fun of the fact that they played on messing with the audience. They messed with and they lightly toyed with the messing with the writer and stuff like that. But this one, they just went full bore. This is, why do you keep doing that? This is a similarity between all of your shows. Every one of your shows is doing the exact same thing. Blah blah blah. It was a blast. I loved it, and absolutely, if you're solid on your key shows and you haven't watched this show, I don't know why you're missing out on this.
Yeah, I think I maybe it's just me misremembering, but I want to say this season was vastly more funnier than the first season.
Exactly.
And I think that's because they started to kind of focus a little bit, because with the last season it felt like they were trying to kind of they were working too hard to really kind of shuffle characters around, and they were doing it for purpose. Like the one that I pointed out in the first season was this idea that they had this moment where they acknowledged that the same seiyuu had played all of these different girls, and so randomly all of them are together and they're talking to each other, and then you have this realization of, oh wait, this is the same seiyuu. But they're not really acknowledging that, but they're kind of acknowledging that. They are obviously, the writers are acknowledging it, but it did seem like they were kind of more focused this time around, really hitting these really funny punchlines with the second season. But that doesn't really mean much, because it's just legit. You watch both seasons and it takes not very long, because they're 4 minutes each, and every single episode of both seasons were absolutely fantastic. And I loved, again, as we said with the first season, I love that willingness for them to really poke fun at not only themselves, their own writing, the writing tropes that they rely on a regular basis. They're making fun of themselves for it, and also poking fun at the fandom and what the fandom gravitated towards, what the fandom chose. I mean, the one key example with the first season was around Ryo and the criticisms that she kind of had from the fandom and how much that really weighed down upon her. That stuff's just really hilarious. But again, I think the moment that I get the most kick out of personally is just how willing they are to make fun of themselves, make fun of their own choices, make fun of their own characters, and it's always been classic. They technically did like a story beat with this particular one, but I will say, admittedly, the build up to that quote unquote story they decided to tell with the second season, mainly surrounding the Angel Beat characters, I didn't like. Those were those brief moments where it was almost taking away from the comedy and going, let's try to build up a story. And I'm like, please just get back to the funny stuff. It does lead up to something really funny, but it was a outside of that, I think everything was just pure joy. And I do like that at the very end of the season, they almost had a cap off in where it kind of suggests that things are wrapped up, but it's almost like them saying, if you enjoy this enough, we might continue on. Like, it almost feels like they're saying, if you like this enough, we might keep going. But I think it was almost a statement to the entirety of the franchises they've had, which I thought was really cute. This little nice bookend of, loving something so much continues it on, which I thought was a really cute little... Yes, it's more cute because they're involving certain characters, but yes, they're technically making a nice little cute statement about the fandom, the passion that they have for their properties, and how these stories have touched people's hearts for so long, and that can make it continue on, which I thought was pretty sweet. And yeah, every time they poke fun at Ricky, I always
poor Ricky.
Ricky is like the heroine's party.
Ricky.
They're like the pajama party's going on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And at the very end, Ricky's like, "Excuse me, why am I here?" Because you're Ricky, and they're probably gonna do things to you because everybody's thirsty for Ricky. And that's so funny because it's like the biggest, like, this must be a Japanese fandom thing, because I've always, the thing that puzzled me with the first season, and I can get it. I obviously get it because from a perspective of Little Busters and at least the anime adaptation. But it's like, it's always this goofy thing of like, why is everybody super thirsty for Ricky? And why are they bringing it here? I guess I see it. Yes, I technically did see it from the original adaptation at least, but geez, it's like super thirsty for this guy. Everybody wants him. But yeah, super great. I think I mentioned with the first season, and same with the second season. I think the only thing that really kind of went over my head was a lot of the rewrite stuff. But I think that was because the rewrite adaptation just sucked to tell the characters. And this is a lot to do with character references. Like, each of these characters most of the jokes are about the characters and what they've gone through and what their quirks are. So they had to have Kotomi play the violin. I was like, when she went on, here we go. I'm surprised it took them this. I think she had her playing in the background at one point, but yeah, it was like, yeah, there we go. But yeah, great season. I still love it to death. If you are a fan of, I think what did we say last time? If you at least watch probably at least 4 of the animes or read 4 of the visual novels, you'll probably get most of the jokes. It's just kind of, anything less than that, you're gonna get things spoiled, especially in the first episode of the first season, because it, again, jokes about every ending. But I think my biggest concern is partially to get the jokes, but partially is to, yes, you're technically getting, they're making fun of characters' conclusions most of the time. So yeah, there you go. Gosh, I'm so sad. When they went through each of them, like, oh, this happened to me. This is why this happened. Like, oh, this is so sad. Like the goal thing. Every time they did the goal thing, I was kind of happy they finally kind of let up on that with the second season, because the first season they went bonkers with that. Kaginado season 2. Check that out. Highly recommend if you're a fan of Key Studios for sure. The Rising of Shield Heroes second season, or Tatai no Yusha no Nari Agari. This one is streaming on Crunchyroll, run for 13 episodes. They already confirmed a third season. I think they confirmed both the second and third season at the same time, so we already knew there was going to be a third season. But yeah, done by Studio Kinema Citrus and DR Movie. Yeah, based on a light novel, action, adventure, comedy, drama, romance, I guess. Fantasy, seinen. And this one, for some reason, I'm familiar with the series. Essentially, has this guy named Naofumi who gets transported to another world, or at least summoned there, along with 3 other guys, and they are each kind of assigned to be the hero, a cardinal hero of different types of weapons. There's like a bow hero, a spear hero, a sword hero, and for some reason, Naofumi gets assigned the shield hero, which is like apparently according to this kingdom, like the outcast, like nobody wants him, so he quickly gets kind of pushed to the side. Eventually, he gets kind of framed for, forcing himself upon the princess, and that leads to him being even more exiled. And then he decides at that point, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to power up by myself. I'm going to do my own thing. If this kingdom doesn't want me, I'm just going to level myself up alone, and eventually the whole concept is why they're being summoned there is they have to take down these waves of creatures that attack at these set times. And if they can defeat all these waves, they can return home. So again, he kind of just does his own thing by himself, and while being hated pretty much by everybody. In this season, going in the second season, we pretty much rejoin Naofumi, obviously, and suddenly a turtle shows up. This sacred beast that shows up that starts to kind of pretty much mow down everything. Legend says that it pretty much destroys everything, and it must be stopped. And then eventually leads to them going to somewhere else, some other lands, and meeting people from another direction, or from a different vantage point, I guess I'll just say that. Lot to do with, out of nowhere, unless Chris can explain to me, out of nowhere, vassal weapons being a thing, which I didn't know vassals was a thing, but that just came out of nowhere from the queen during the turtle thing. But anyways, I'm going to stop. I'm going to start getting my reviews. Go ahead, Chris. Did you even finish it?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure, because I think at some point I was mentioning something, and you're like, I haven't got into it yet.
Yeah, I fell away for a few episodes. It wasn't because I
watch for out of obligation.
No. I was fine with it. I just, things were getting weird, and I was falling behind on a lot of shows. So this one I didn't really have a problem with. I do admit a lot of the turtle stuff seemed a little bit like they were having a hard time, and it seemed like, from as I was getting kind of more information on what everybody was pretty much saying, is that they kind of rushed through a lot of that part. And it does show, because a lot of what seems like they should be explaining, because I think that the turtle arc should have been very, very interesting. There should have been a lot of mechanics involved in what was going on during that time frame. And it seems like they were hinting at stuff that should have been explained a lot better. And it's one of those that I almost feel like I want to go back and go into the light novel just to get more rounded on what was going on during that time frame, because it felt like they were skimming through a lot of that stuff. And maybe it was because they wanted to get to the other world that they got into in the second half of the show.
The consensus is that this is just pretty much the worst story that this writer has.
Oh, really?
They rush this. The majority of everybody that I've spoken to and heard from, everybody says this is legit their worst story arc. And so a lot of people are speculating they just wanted to rush through this. The studio and everybody just wanted to get through this because they needed this to be here, but they want to get to the next part.
And I see.
Because, yeah, this could probably have been easily 25 episodes, because it feels like if you would have actually explained certain things, it probably would have lasted a lot longer than the 13 we got.
For sure. I mean, like I said, it seems like it seemed like it was skimming a lot of across a lot of things that feel like they should be more significant than they actually were treated in the show. So,
and that's what bugs me, is because again, the vessel thing, I don't remember them ever explain the vessel thing before. Like I said, it felt like the queen out of nowhere says, oh, by the way, some vessel warriors are coming and they'll help. And it's like, wait, are they talking about Ren, the sword hero, the spear hero, and the bow hero? And then suddenly we find these, the group that's actually the vessels, and I'm like, wait, I thought those were cardinal heroes. And that I went downhill from there, and then we got into the other world. I'm like, what's a cardinal hero and what's a vessel hero? I'm like, you never sat down and explained that, unless I forgot it from the first season, which I don't remember them ever explaining anything besides the cardinal heroes. And it felt, and this is my problem, that's my struggle. When I criticize something, especially something like this, it's because I want it to be good. And so when I get in those things like that, and I'm like, gosh, just spend an episode explaining this to me. This is the stuff that I want to eat up, and you guys are just skimming over it because you're trying to rush to this whole CGI turtle fight and get to this other world, which, God, the bad guy, the Kyo. Sorry, go on.
Anyway, so when it comes down to it, I acknowledge the turtle arc as a frustration. But for a lack of a better term, I'm generally warm on this season. I thought that they, especially in the latter half when they got into the second world, a lot of that stuff was really fun. Getting into the vessels, certain characters receiving vessel weapons. I thought that they were going to do a vessel weapon bargain sale and hand them out, but apparently not. So that's where I'm at. I enjoyed myself especially in the second half, and I still love the show.
Yeah, and what they did with the vessel weapons in the later part was like, that stuff's super fascinating, and what that technically means for that character and how they've been changed. And yeah, again, can they go back? There was a lot of like questions where it's like, you could have done something really interesting here, but you never really, you're too busy trying to rush through it that we never get to get answers that I'm assuming we got in the light novel. But yeah, for me, this is Shield Hero. Okay, let me preface my everything by explaining my thoughts on Shield Hero as a whole. I think Shield Hero as a series started really strong. It was obviously at that time a very different take on isekai, because it was an isekai of somebody who gets, villainized, becomes very hateful and spiteful of the people he was summoned by. It was a very different take, typically. Now we have Tsukimichi and stuff like that, but still, this was kind of a newer take on it, and I really enjoyed it. It was a cool, different take, and I love the shield and how it absorbs things, and it gives them different stats and different abilities from the sword. I like the concept of Raphtalia and him creating a pact, obviously bad pact, but a pact with her in order to benefit her and increases her. I love Raphtalia as a character. Fido was cute, shows up and just be cute. I really enjoyed all that stuff. The setup for the first core of Shield Hero was solid. And then similar to something like Sword Art Online, second half, peters down for me. It wasn't that great. I hated the whole church guy and the fight that they had with him. It was just kind of very boring. So my expectations, I wanted some expectations to be built in my mind for, let's do something cool in the second season. Rebuild my trust for the series. And what a worse time to think that, because I think personally, Shield Hero's second season is by far the best example I will always give to anybody if they ever wonder what I think is bad pacing. Because this is a prime, like if you open up the Anime Webster's Dictionary and look up bad pacing, the whole page, it will be one shot of the key art of the second season, and that's it. It is terrible pacing. And again, a lot of people are speculating and equating that to, especially if they read the light novel and know how much stuff was skipped, is because this is apparently not the best arc, and they wanted to get through all of this stuff now so they can get to what's going to be possibly in the third season. And so that sucks for me, because I'm thinking, if I don't start up the third season and immediately go, yeah, I'm liking where this is going, it's going to make me want to stop watching this series, because I don't like watching something when I don't enjoy it. And my frustration and my comments about this show is always around the idea that I want this to be good. I want all these stories to be told in a great way. And by far, whether it be a bad story or it be how it was portrayed, this season sucked. And I think the thing that troubles me the most about the second season was Kyo. Because Kyo is a continued pattern that this writer has to writing bad villains. This if we get another Kyo in the next season, I am going to be convinced that this writer sucks at villains. Malty's a terrible villain. The church pope guy was a terrible villain, and Kyo is a terrible villain. Even the guy that was working for Kyo for a brief moment was a terrible. They tried to do something with him for a brief moment, but this writer sucks at villains, because every writer is either a grinning, cackling bad guy, and none of them really have substance behind them at all. They're always about wanting to see Naofumi upset. They want to see Naofumi in pain. They just cackle and say, haha, I made you upset. That's what I was looking for. It's terrible writing. This writer is
bad at villains. And I hope, again, going into third season and onward, I hope that there's something more to his writing for bad guys. Because again, I don't want this. I'm already seeing a pattern. But let me get positive. Unfortunately, the only positive I can give this season, the only good thing I got out of this entire season was, yes, I'm curious to learn more about the vassals, the vassal weapons, what it means for a certain character to becoming a wielder of a vassal weapon. That stuff I'm curious about and I want to see more of. At the same time, Raphtalia's episode. Like, if I got nothing out of these 13 episodes, I got Raphtalia's episode. Also, I really liked Kizuna. I really, really liked Kizuna. I loved her introduction. I love the fact that she's technically the fishing rod hero, pretty much. The fishing hero, which is dorky. I actually really loved her moment in the last episode with the Castaway reference, which was really hilarious. I loved Kizuna. I think she's a great character. At the same time, I'm really dreadfully afraid of her as a character because I feel like they're putting her in the martyr realm. But we'll see.
I liked her as a kind of a reflection of Naofumi. I think that she was an absolute fantastic, her being basically a thrown away hero, just like Naofumi was.
She wasn't a thrown away hero. The bad guys captured her.
I know. I understand. To me, the way I seen a lot of reflections in the two of them. So,
yeah, not sure, but yeah, that's the show. Check that out if that's interesting to you. I'm sure if you've watched the first season, you already watched the second season, or you just given up on it and you're just looking to. I guess you could be wondering if it got any better. We'll see with third season. We'll see with the third season. But like I said, Raphtalia's episode was great. I loved Raphtalia's episode. And again, even that one felt rushed, but at the same time, I think I got enough out of it that I was fine with it. So we'll see. We'll see. There you go. The Dawn of the Witch, or Mahotsukai Reimeki. This one is streaming on Crunchyroll, run for 12 episodes, done by Studio Tezuka Productions. Source is a light novel. Genres are action, adventure, comedy, fantasy. And yeah, I guess the thing to note here is, of course, this is a story that takes place in the world after the events of Grimoire of Zero, another series that was done a while back and adapted as well. So keep that in mind. But yes, this one opens up kind of in a post, like I said earlier, Grimoire of Zero world, where essentially this guy known as 13 was causing a lot of chaos, and eventually that awakened magic into the world, into the public. And so it's kind of a regular thing now that people do know magic and learn magic. But it seems like in order to prevent people from learning magic and using it for bad things, they decided to create like this kind of academy for people to come learn magic and learn how to use it properly. Otherwise, again, it can cause destruction. And we follow several students within this academy, including Seibu, Holt, and Kudo. And at some point, the three of them are enlisted to do this one project where they have to go down to this village in the south and help kind of spread, I guess, a positive viewpoint of witches in the world, or people that use magic. Because even though in history, the church was hunting down anybody that was a witch or that had magic, now it's more accepted now, but there's still this area of the region that still doesn't accept it, and people have a bad view of mages, because obviously there's some mage in the history that caused a lot of problems. So their whole task is to go down there, go to this one village, and again help promote a positive viewpoint of magic. And the quirk thing here is Seibu, which is one of the people that was included. He doesn't really have much memories of his past. He doesn't really have any ability whatsoever. He really sucks at magic. He thought that he was going to get kicked out of the academy, but this is kind of his last hope. If he doesn't successfully pull this off, if he doesn't go down there and learn something in a new environment, they're just going to wipe his memory and kick him out. Like I said earlier, Holt and Kudo is with them as well. Holt has her own history. Kudo is kind of a lizard type, so he's not really seen positively as well. And then their actual instructor, the person that was going to escort them down there and becomes their instructor, is Los, who is this great, powerful wizard of the past that really wants to gain favor from the academy so that she can get access to the Grimoire of Zero, which is, again, this book that they base all their magics off of. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of the story. They head down there and shenanigans happens, and lots of people want mages dead, and they have to, again, bring positivity into the world of magic. Thoughts?
There's part of me, I really did like the show, but part of me, after reflecting on it and considering what I seen with Grimoire of Zero and then placing it against this show, I think that the formula that Grimoire of Zero had worked a little bit better. This one was so based in this one village. Sabe is an interesting character, and digging into his past and what his hangups are, and eventually getting him to start growing into his abilities is well done. Holt and Kudo are absolute great, and even Los Sensei are absolutely great characters to bounce off of Seb. These all work together in a solid story. The problem that I think that that is inherent in this particular part of this story is that it doesn't explore the world the same way that Grimoire of Zero did. Zero going from town to town gave you a more rounded view of the world, and it allowed you to understand the world as a whole, whereas everything else in this story was kind of focused on Seb and what he's exploring in this particular village. Does that make sense?
No. Well, the only reason I'm saying no is because that was my whole argument with the first season, was that, or with Grimoire Zero, is that it was like they traveled for like 3 episodes and then they got stuck on a story. It was like it all just kind of just culminated. We're stopping here. Like they did. My problem with the first season was that I wanted them to travel more, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's my thing, is that them being so focused in this one place, it ended up kind of inverting the direction of the storytelling to Seb, which is him being the main character does make sense, but he is a very his story, while it is interesting, there's a certain amount of how much leverage you can get from that story. To explore the world, you need to move around the world, and to me, whether you agree of whether or not Grimoire of Zero told a well-rounded story, there was exploring and understand and getting to the world and what was going on, where this is not doing any of that. It's just all focused on this one city. I'm getting hooked up on that. I liked it. It did well. I liked a lot of the characters that they brought into the story, especially kind of balancing past pains versus understanding the person that you're trying to quote unquote target and whether or not they are truly evil. A lot of that stuff was well done, I think. But ultimately, getting to the end and saying, "Hey, we're going to explore now," was a little frustrating for me. I wanted to get to more of the story, and I don't think that they confirmed another season or not. And to me, that they're right there at the point of finally we're getting somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that would work unless they all went together. But I don't know. It's interesting to hear you have an opposite effect to this one that I had with the first season. Because like I said, with my thoughts on Grimoire of Zero was that I loved the idea of the opening. I liked Zero as a character. I liked the mercenary Yohei. I know that's redundant. Yohei and Zero were just kind of a really great chemistry between the two of them. And I loved seeing them travel for, like I said, what seemed, if I remember correctly, just a few episodes. And then suddenly it felt like they got all caught up with the bigger picture of the witches, the church, and 13. Now, I guess before I get too into the weeds on this whole thing, I do want to preface everything with the big question: do you have to watch Grimoire of Zero? I think you you could watch this show without watching Grimoire of Zero. I think it benefits you a little bit to watch Grimoire of Zero because you have a lot of cameos of characters in the Dawn of the Witch that kind of benefit you to know their history, and you technically get that history from the Grimoire of Zero. I don't feel like you'll be lost because, like I said, it technically opens up explaining what 13 is at the very beginning and what happened and why they're at their current situation. And then later on, when you start, getting into these other characters, they're not just cameos. They are an existence of this world. And I think that whole argument of, well, you're just getting a cameo, which is beneficial, they're actually a part of the story. And it's just continuing that story. So again, it benefits you because you understand characters a little more when you go into it, but it's not required. It does explain to you what you need to know, and you're not lost. Like when a character shows up, you're not just going to have to assume what they are. You get an idea based on what they tell you. So you can do both. Either way, it's fine.
I think it's worth it.
I think, honestly, this is a huge step up from the first season, or Grimoire of Zero. I think they've definitely gotten better at writing. My only stipulation there is I think Seibu is a terrible character. Like, he's super boring, and they play too heavily on his emotionlessness that he is. Yes, they technically tie him into the stories and stuff like that and explain him a little bit, but at the same time, it doesn't excuse the fact that he's an extremely boring main character that I absolutely dislike. I've never really cared much for the emotionless doll main character with no past and no sense of feeling that has to have everything explained to him, how people are acting. I did like how he threw off Los, though, at some point. I do like that. But it does turn into some funny moments with Los and Holt and stuff, but at the same time, he's just a blank slate, and he's very boring. As opposed to, like I said, Grimoire of Zero with Zero and Yohei being really fantastic characters. But yeah, what made it bearable, though, is the fact that every other character was fantastic. I loved Los as a character. She's very much so the Napoleon character, the 300-year-old lolly character that just stands on the table and proclaims things. She's super fun. She's super spitfire. She has a great little personality. And it's interesting that you get eventually into the idea that she's kind of has a dark viewpoint of the world itself, and the idea that she's bored because she's been around for so long. And then you have those moments where she's talking about how the thing that excites her is seeing war because she knows things are going to change. She doesn't care about the corpses around her. She just cares the fact that, oh, things are going to change. Things will be different now. And that's kind of a twisted little mindset that she has. Holt was great. Her story was fantastic. I love the developments of her in the early stages, what she went through as a younger child, her involvement with certain groups. Kudo, his backstory was fantastic. His driving force, what he desires going forward, was fantastic. There's so many great characters, minus Seibu, that really do carry the show as a whole that I really enjoyed getting to. The concept of what they're dealing with, I think, again, this probably goes against my argument about watching this first rather than not watching Grimoire Zero, because I think towards the later half of the show, so much of it is about, again, changing the perspective of what people see as wizards and witches and mages and stuff like that in this world. And I did kind of like what direction they took that in. This idea of creating a more positive look at magic and the challenges that each of them face in building their own magecraft. The more kind of questionable stuff, I guess, later on is really getting heavy into what, I guess, mistakes that people make and expectations of them if they were once bad people. Redemption, I guess. That stuff was kind of a little weird for me, but it didn't bog it down for me at all. I think there was probably a little segment of probably like 2 or 3 episodes. I guess the earlier segments of them really settling down at the village that I thought was kind of boring, because they were all trying to kind of find their own shop and their own job that they were going to do at the village to, form their own craft. That stuff I think was kind of boring, but it really did pick up towards the later parts, and I think it was a solid ending to it in the end. So overall, I love this show a lot more than Grimoire of Zero. I just think it had better chemistry, and like I've said before, the later part of Grimoire of Zero really lost it for me. But good cast of character. I really enjoyed the chemistry, and at the end, I think it told a really solid story. Do I want more? Yeah, I would love to have more. So yeah, it was solid. Really enjoyed it. So yeah, Grimoire Zero. Oh no, Grimoire, sorry. The Dawn of the Witch. The Dawn of the Witch. Check that out. Check that out if it's interesting. I think it did a good job with the animation, by the way. It had a few slip up points here and there with wonky character designs. One bar scene was like, woof, what happened here? Like one shot was like, who did you guys give this scene to? Cause this woof. But for the most part, it looked fine. They did a decent job with it. The CGI creature things they had at some point was a little bit rough too, but it worked. I enjoyed it. The Demon Girl Next Door, Season 2, or Machikado Mazoko Toshome. This one streamed on High Dive, ran for 12 episodes, done by Studio JC staff. Sources of manga, genres are comedy, slice of life. And this one, for those that aren't familiar with the series, essentially follows a girl named Shamiko. At some point, she awakens to becoming a demon. Like, she wakes up one morning, she has horns. And then her mother pretty much tells her the dark history of her family, that they're from like this dark clan, and they're basically the demons of this world. And oh, by the way, there's these magical girls in this town too, and you gotta avoid them. It kind of starts to get a little bit of this idea, this one girl that Shamiko runs into. Because the whole idea is that her family, their entire life, has had like this curse placed upon them, this curse of poverty, that no matter how much wealth they gain, they'll still end up in poverty because like their money just kind of disappears. And so the only way to get their family out of poverty that they've been living this entire time is that they have to defeat a magical girl. And so Shamiko makes it like her purpose that she's going to defeat a magic girl. And she ends up running into one, which is Momo, this girl that actually goes to her school. And so she constantly is trying to beat Momo because she thinks that if she does, she can get rid of this curse. And so the bad thing is that Momo's like really sweet. So even though Shamiko wants to defeat her, she's like super nice. Even goes so far as to train Shamiko to help her get stronger. And that kind of got pretty crazy. It was kind of very comedic with the first season, but at some point they decided to kind of open up the story to really kind of tell this bigger picture. Why Shamiko's facing what she faced, this history about Momo and her sister and all this kind of stuff they were getting into, and the village, the town as a whole, and this kind of seal that was placed there to kind of prevent the demons from running into the magical girls in the city. All this kind of stuff they were opening up, and that's something they get into with the second season, as they really kind of start diving into that stuff, diving into Momo's sister, getting into the history and how Shamiko's kind of tied in with all that stuff, and like kind of bookending it with an interesting little insight into Mikan, which I thought was kind of surprising. So, your thought on season 2?
Yeah, when it comes down to the second season of the show, I really did love a lot of the stuff that they got into. Like Andrew had mentioned, getting into Shamiko's her curse, for lack of a better term. Actually, they talked about a lot of curses across the board. A couple of characters definitely got kind of solved-ish. And so, yes, that is one of the really great things that you can come away from the second season of the show. Getting into that and solving issues and introducing new characters that kind of needed to be there for that. The biggest issue that I have with the second season, and I'm sure Andrew will probably get into the same thing, is the pacing sucked. It felt like they were putting shorts together. They were so disjointed in some cases, where almost to the point where it was actually detracting from my enjoyment. Although the jokes were still there, they still hit in a lot of cases. The overall storylines were there. They still hit. It felt weird in a lot of cases. It didn't feel the same way that it did in the first season, where it felt very much warm and natural. I
want to say that when I looked into it, it was a case of like, I feel like this first season they did a better job of trying to fill in the gaps, because I think with the manga it technically plays out like that. It's very panel, joke. And it really felt like, I think that the first season, my assumption there was that they were doing a better job of putting some breathing room in there and letting the jokes set for a little bit. And I don't think they really did that with the second season. It almost felt like the second season they just went, just hit the panels, just hit the panels, hit the panels. And yeah, it kind of has that feeling of like you're going from one joke to the next, and you're not letting up and letting me breathe and actually laugh for a moment. But yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much. I enjoyed it. A lot of the stuff that they got into was really fantastic. The jokes were there. The pacing was just weird.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my main and only negative that's going to have with second season is that I feel like breakneck speed, and it just felt like it was just rushing through everything. Like the pacing was super fast feeling. And like I said before, I never got a chance to really kind of breathe and go, okay, hold on, with that joke, go back. Hold on, let me absorb what you're doing here, which did kind of bother me a little bit, especially when it came to the story moments. Where the story moments, I do feel like the pacing slowed down a little bit when it really started digging into, like I said, Momo's sister and getting into the original curse and all that kind of stuff that was surrounding Shamiko, which was fine. It's just kind of, like I said before, the pacing just felt really off this season, especially, and it was one of those things where I had to go back to the first season and rewatch some parts going, is it always been this way? And like, no, it wasn't. It was like the first season was very well paced, and this one just felt like slow down. But even still, I still love this series so much. Just give me Shamiko. Give me Shamiko 24/7, and I am a happy camper because I absolutely adore Shamiko's character. And it's kind of I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think that JC staff, despite the fact that I'm failing on the pacing thing with this season, is really good at really bringing Shamiko to life. And like I mentioned earlier with the show that I was talking about earlier, I forget which one it was, Shachiku, they do a great job of adding like different cues in the background and sound effects to really amplify just how adorable Shamiko is. When she's talking to somebody, her tail's always pointing in a different direction and emoting in some way, and there's some sound effect to go with it, or there's a voice cue in the background to accent the scene. They just do it really great. Like you have her fidgeting, you'll see like the fidgeting katakana fly up in the air and it says fidgeting in the background. It's super cute, and it really does amplify just how adorable Shamiko is. I cannot express that enough. Momo, I've always kind of just enjoyed the fact that she bounces off Shamiko really well, and the fact that Shamiko really likes her has always been a kind of a thing that Momo does. I don't really care much for her overall, but she still, as long as Shamiko wants her in the scene, I'm happy with her being in the scene. Mikan always kind of felt like was a little bit off with the first season, but I do think she came into a great addition to the cast with this season for sure. They really did improve her character and everything with this season. I love getting into the whole sister thing. Now, my only question mark segment of this season was definitely around the restaurant. At some point, it just felt like very randomly, Shamiko is now working at this restaurant. And it's like, yes, it's technically story. There's a reason for it in the story, but it's like at some point I'm like, I realize, why are we so focused on this restaurant? Like, why are we suddenly... It felt like I was watching a different show. Suddenly, it isn't Shamiko with Momo and Mikan and the ancestor doing shenanigans on the side. Suddenly, out of nowhere, it's just Shamiko with these two new characters, and they're at this restaurant. And I'm like, why are we spending so much time here? I kind of didn't like it, but I do really like Liko. Liko is so fantastic, and I just love her. And it took a while. It took a while before they started really kind of revealing what Liko was doing the entire time, and it really got into like her kind of mischievous but helpful nature that she has in the background. But when they really started hitting on that stuff, I'm like, I really like this character. Like, she's super funny. She's got this really, like I said, almost a mischievous nature to herself, but she's always like very bubbly about it. So like she says, oh, well, I made it look like this so that you would actually eat it because you need it. But at the same time, I kind of want to see if you eat it. It was kind of like one of those kind of things. And I absolutely fell in love with her. And I love her. She has a dialect to her, really deep. And I think she's absolutely adorable. So, again, I kind of was a little bit question mark with the whole restaurant thing with the early segments. And then, like I said, I just got sold on Liko so quickly. But yeah, just more great stuff. I love Shamiko. She got a new weapon, and I love the shenanigans that came with that new weapon. Love the story moments, which again, as we mentioned with the first season, I think the first season was always about Shamiko, the comedy, the cute nature of it, and then suddenly out of nowhere, bam, story. And then the second season's like so much more focused on that story stuff, which is what I really did want to eat up, and I really did enjoy all that stuff. And yeah, it turned into some shenanigans in the later part of it. So yeah, good stuff. Still love it. Still highly suggest Demon Girl Next Door. If you have not checked out the series, I highly recommend it. So yeah, Shion's weird too. Shion is super weird. I always love the sister too. Shamiko's sister's like Shamiko.
She doesn't get enough screen time at all.
Yeah, but I think it's because they're not wanting to overplay her story, her joke, which is the fact that she's like. The whole idea at the very beginning was like, okay, Shamiko can become like this big, powerful demon and you know, rise to power and conquer the world. And the sister's always there to kind of go, I can show you how to be. She's always supporting. Like, and you realize really quickly, I can totally see this like a jump forward segment at some point, and you realize that her sister becomes the actual demon lord because she's so much more calculative and she has the strats that everybody needs. And she's super sinister. I love it. So, but she hasn't awakened yet. So she hasn't awakened yet. In the heart of Konoichi Tsubaki no Mune no Uchi. This one's streamed on Crunchyroll, run for 13 episodes, done by Studio Cloverworks. The source is a manga, genres are comedy. The creator of this one is Shuichiro Yamamoto, who of course is known for doing Teasing Master Takagi-san, as well as this next season we're getting Even So Ayumu Draws Closer to the End Game. Music by Peggy's too. We had some music. We had the OP by Peggy's, which is always a welcome. So yeah. This one opens up in this one clan of ninjas, which, as based on the idea of it being Kunoichi, are female ninjas. This is a clan of nothing but female ninjas, and at some point very quickly, we get the sense that there's no men around here, and there's kind of these ongoing jokes and rumors between all these girls that men are stinky and they're weak in the groin and all this stuff, and kind of come to find out they're not allowed to see men. They're actually forbidden to get anywhere near any of the other clans which could have actually men in them, and their just kind of focus is to train as being ninjas. And we follow one main group, which is Team Dog. Each of these groups of girls in their class have different teams, and each one are kind of based off an animal. So you have Team Monkey, Team Rat, and like I said, we're following mainly Team Dog, which is led by Tsubaki, and she has her two underlings, which is Asako and Sazanka. And at some point, very quickly, they end up possibly seeing or being near a male, which just kind of creates this big stir within Tsubaki that she's really desperately. She can't figure out why, but she suddenly is really interested in trying to learn as much as possible about men, even though technically she can get in a lot of trouble if she's found out to be trying to learn about men or trying to see them or whatever. So shenanigans happens. Your thoughts on In the Heart of Kunoichi Tsubaki?
This it's actually kind of funny. When we started going into this one, I don't want to say I enjoyed the first episode or so. I thought it was really charming, really cute and fun, but I was actually kind of disappointed. I think I kind of overhyped myself at first. Now, this doesn't mean that I didn't like the show. It's just that in the first episode or two, I was really, really high off of Takagi-san, and going into this, I was like, I'm gonna love this from the get-go, and I didn't go nuts over it. And after an episode or two, I started kind of falling into the humor that this show is doing. It's really going more for this cutesy girls discovering themselves type show, and I think that was really kind of the direction that they were going with this one. And once I finally understood where they were going with it, I started understanding, okay, this is a different type of humor, and let's go with this. And I really did love it, and it does really work for what they're trying to do here. All these girls and their kind of quirky humors and what they're interested in, and how this kind of works with a ninja aspect of it. And I really did like that, and I really came away really enjoying it. I love the artwork, love the characters, love the the quirky humor that they're doing in this particular show, and I love it.
Yeah, I think I've fallen kind of the same vein as this is kind of where we realize very quickly that this writer's really good at juvenile cutesy stuff. And that was obviously what we got with Teasy Master Takagi-san, was this idea of, okay, here's these two and the discovering of love. But I think then you realize at some point, you remember, what was the other aspect of Teasy Master Takagi-san? You had the other people, like the side characters that weren't quite great writing. And I think that's when you take that aspect and really, you're taking the writer away from what they're golden at, which was between, Takagi and Nishikata. And then you're going, okay, now write something else. And suddenly you're going, yeah, this writer, that's what they're good at. Like that right there is what they're really good at. And so can they really not only do something else, but really expand that more and legit create a comedy story about a whole bunch of characters that have no relationship. Like over here, their golden was relationships. Over here, legit, these characters don't really have relationships. They have friendships and they have bonds between them, but not really, Teasy Master Takagi-san, basically. So, yeah, I kind of had the same mindset, really, is that I didn't really feel like this writer was really doing much at all with this particular story. He is really fantastic at creating characters. All these character designs are fantastic. I love every single one of them. They're so adorable. And then Cloverworks was doing a phenomenal job of animating them. It looked fantastic. Well, for about 3/4 of the show before it started really falling off, unfortunately. But for a good 3/4 of this show looked fantastic. The action scenes were phenomenal, and the characters were on model and they looked adorable. But outside of that, like the characters themselves, I kind of had the same feeling where I kind of had to set my expectations down a little bit. Like this wasn't going to be a laugh out loud comedy, and this is going to be more just kind of goofy, watch these kids have fun and enjoy themselves. I did get quite a few of the stories were solid. To give people a little bit of context here, like I said earlier, there's different teams within this clan. Yeah, the Team Dog, and mostly all of these are all 3 teams. At some point, Team Dog gets a 4th member, and there's one snake, which is 2 for some reason. They're like the only one that had 2, and I think it's because they're just so perfect next to each other. They're like in sync. But it's basically teams of 3, and pretty much every episode you'll get maybe 1, maybe 2 stories out of each one of them of each of these different teams. And I think that was a good choice by the writer because it's a lot of characters. It's a lot of characters. I mean, we're talking upwards of 50 characters here. And I think it helped that they put them in groups of 3. That way their story can be told as a unit. So, like, for instance, Rooster, you have this very serious girl that's leading these 2 other girls that are basically ninja garus, yeah. And so when they finally come down from the mountain, they're mad because they just wasted all this time up there, and she's like just putting them to work. And then, oh yeah, by the way, they actually really like her. They really like that she pushes them. So you get like these stories that are really centered around the group itself. Every now and then kind of breaking off with that I think Sheep is kind of a good example of having most of that Sheep story is Benissimo. Yeah, you have Taiwata, who's like really thinks that Benissimo is not going to her potential by not training. But for the most part, Sheep is Benissimo. Horse is Hina. Hina is like obsessed with being the cutest girl, and so most of Horse is about her. It's Ox. It's mostly about Aijisai. Aijisai is like is being doted on. And she doesn't want to be doted on. So it's a huge cast, but at the same time, I think the writer does very well in trying to focus on either one character or just making the personality of the team the story. So, but at the same time, it's not doing anything. Like, don't expect an overall plot line here. Yes, there's a little bit of story about why they're not allowed to see men, but you could probably see that from a mile away. It's about just these cute little fun moments of each individual team and what their problem is. Like Boar being, they're all super strong. They're all dorks. They're all super strong, but they have no sense of direction. So it kind of just plays into that being the joke. And I think for that, again, I'm agreeing with Chris here that you go from Teasing Master Takagi-san, where it's about that chemistry of these two characters, and this writer did so good with that chemistry, to now suddenly 50 characters. What are they going to do? What is this writer doing? What is the whole thing that Tsubaki is going to see a boy, and then that's going to be the thing? No, it's about this clan of a bunch of kids, and they're all goofballs, and there's shenanigan that unfolds. So I agree that I really felt like it took me a while to finally kind of change my expectations. I think the lower expectation was a bad way to put it. Change my expectation to it being about turning on this show and watching which cute team of girls we're going to watch and what goofy quirk are they going to have. And I really enjoyed it in the end. I had my concerns early on, and I think that's because it took a while to really kind of introduce all these characters, and I don't think the writer really got their legs into what they wanted to do with the characters. It took I think it was the moment that we had Benissimo's story, which again, I think is like the second, maybe third episode. The moment we got Benissimo's story, I was like, okay, I like this. I'm liking what we're doing. Before Benissimo, it just looked really good. The characters looked great, and it had some really cool action scenes. But once Benissimo's story happened, I'm like, I get a feel of this writer, and I really enjoyed it from that point on. I loved Ox's story. I thought Horse's, well, at least Hina was a dork. I got a huge kick out of so many cute moments with a lot of these characters, and in the end, I really enjoyed it. Even though the fact that, like I said, the fourth quarter, the quality came down a little bit.
I want to clarify. I agree. I think that this, I kind of imply, the way I said that implies that I was overly hyped. And
no,
I
said that. I was correcting myself.
I'm kind of fixing myself as well. I'm not saying that I didn't. I was lowering my expectations for this.
Hello,
it's not.
Welcome to the Talk of Spirit Animecast, where we lower our expectations.
I wanted to. I needed to adjust to a different type of humor, like Andrew was saying. It is a very good way of explaining it. Is you're going into it with one expectation, and this actually kind of gives credit to kind of one of the things that I had mentioned with Teasing Master Takagi-san, where I did actually start to like the other girls. If the writer is getting better at more just adolescent humor, that explains why I did start to, the other three girls did start to grow on me when I did not like, if you listen to my first season, I absolutely despised the extra girls. I did not like their humor at all. However, in the latter seasons, I did actually start to like their humor. And this would actually explain a lot of that if they were getting better at writing just adolescent humor of just like Andrew had said, some of the characters are absolute goofballs, and I love the way that they are. Like Andrew had mentioned with Boar. Boar is just a bunch of dorks. They're just we're gonna start a fight with Benny because Benny is so strong and throws up the log in the air and it lands, and that's the direction that obviously Benny went, but she went the opposite direction completely. I love that stuff. It's just, it wasn't Benny, it was Tsubaki.
I was gonna say, I was like, should I say, because somebody's gonna probably correct you later. I know. Mokoren was great. Mokoren was like super pure. I loved her.
Yeah, there was so much humor in this show that just is in one respect,
the monkey wanted to take the dog name.
There's so much cutesy humor that
we even had a Genshin Impact reference. Did we mention that?
Did we? I don't remember.
Ajisai was actually the same Seiyu.
Oh yeah, that's right. You were you had pointed
and
that.
She had one of those moments where suddenly, like, what was it? No, it was like, hi Denayo.
There's so much stuff in this.
She accepted the doting, and then she got mad that she accepted the doting.
I just love it, and I throw it every credit in the world that this writer has great writing, and I'm super excited about the next show that's coming up. I just know that they have fantastic, and they're growing. Is what I'm kind of implying is there's a lot of growth in this writer that they're getting control over their craft, and they know what they're good at, and they're nailing it.
You know what's so funny is like there was a moment that I got a little frustrated with the show. Then I realized it's actually good writing. What I mean is, these are obviously, most of these are kids. These are kids, and so they have, like, the very beginning opens up with them all giggling about what they think men are. They're stinky, they're smelly. Oh my gosh, I heard that they're really weak in the groin. They must be all ugly and stinky. And like I said, it's a bunch of kids just making fun of something they don't know about. And then most of that's true. And then later on, when you have this moment where one of them introduces the idea of attractiveness jutsu, and it's like, I realized at some point where, like, 3 episodes later, I'm like, they're still joking about this? Like, is this legit all we're doing? And I'm like, at some point I realized, oh, that's kids. Like, they get stuck on something and they won't shut up about it. And I'm like, that's technically how they should act. Like, they're not gonna let this go. They're gonna keep hitting. I mean, I immediately remember back in the day, we had this one VHS of us on a big road trip, and we got on this road trip. At some point, our parents left on the video camera, and so it's just the dashboard of the car, and you can hear us saying the same joke over and over for hours. And at some point, they just stop it. I'm like, yes, that's technically what kids do. They'll just keep, and then you hear, like, a couple minutes later, we whisper it. We whisper the same stupid joke. We wouldn't let it go even after they yelled at us. So yeah, that's kind of what kids do. But it was cute. I liked a lot of the backstories. I love Sazanka's backstory. It was really cute. Like I said, I had a lot of. I think Benissimo was fantastic. Mokonin was great. Yeah, just love it. And like I said, the character designs are phenomenal. I'm so glad that Cloverworks worked on it, despite my issues with the later parts kind of dropping off visually, because it looked great in the end.
Truth be told, I have to agree with Andrew. Benny's probably best girl.
Oh yeah, Benny was fantastic.
Yeah, I absolutely
kicked butt. She was mischievous.
As much as I love Tsubaki, I think that Benny just absolutely stole the show. She just really did.
Tsubaki's just pure.
Yeah,
Tsubaki's too pure that you can't have those moments like Benissimo could. Like, you can't have Tsubaki be mischievous. It's Benissimo fills that gap. So yeah, her messing with Hino was like,
she couldn't do it either.
She couldn't let it go. Yeah, great girls. Right? It does kind of, in the end, what you kind of realize at the very end, we've kind of hit on pretty much everybody. I mean, like I said, there's a couple side characters within certain clans that don't really get much attention. Like I mentioned before, Team Horse, it's all focused on Hina, and most of Ox is focused on Aji. So you kind of hope that since now we've kind of established all the characters, hope for a second season at this point. But yeah, I did enjoy it in the end, and I do kind of want more. So, and they've kind of opened up a couple doors at the very end. So obviously you want more. In the Heart of Konoichi Tsubaki, check that out if that's interesting to you. Kaguya-sama, Love is War, Ultra Romantic. This one's streamed on Crunchyroll, ran for 13 episodes. They have already announced another anime project in the works, which I think a lot of people are speculating would be a 4th season based on content. I'm not sure. But yeah, A1 Pictures is a studio. Sources of manga and genres are comedy and romance. And for those that are, for some reason, out of the mix here, it essentially follows Shirogane and Shinomiya, and they are student council president and vice president, and they like each other, but they don't want to admit it, and so it turns into a game of who will be the first one to confess, or how can they make the other one confess to them before they have to confess. Basically, it turns into a game, and a lot of shenanigans happen, a lot of goofy people that are part of the student council as well, and now we're in, this is the 3rd season, right? Yeah, 3rd season. How'd you enjoy it? How'd you like it? Is it still holding up? I mean, 3 seasons in, this has got to get old. It's got to be getting old, Chris. Are you hating it? Did you hate the 3rd season?
Oh, no. Definitely not. When you ask in a certain way, is it holding up? Yes, it is. Some things, it's one of those things. Is like, I mean, technically, this is what we're at 36 episodes now. It's in and
39, yeah, depending on how many the other ones were. I think the first one was 12 and the second one was 12, wasn't it?
Yeah, some things it's like just move on. I get it. Some of the jokes are not hitting anymore, but when it comes down to it, it's still solid. I mean, I think that probably the thing that bothered me the most was I'm getting tired of the president isn't as perfect as he likes to pretend he is, or something like that. And that really kind of was the most dragging when it came to the singing thing. I'm so tired of hearing about how the president can't sing. I'm so done with that. But other than that, I mean,
and Chika freaking out every time that she might have to train him.
Chika and Hayasaka, their reaction to it is probably more humorous than the fact that he can't do it, and that's dragging that joke out. Other than that, it's absolutely a fantastic show. It's so, I mean, I can't sing enough praises for this show. I even loved I kind of complained to Andrew when it comes down to it. It's like, I hate how much they're dragging out this final moment, that it's one of those that, you know, it's here, and then the announcer saying that, oh, you're gonna have to wait just one more minute. And it almost got to the point where I was like wanting to throw things every time that announcer came in and said just one more moment.
They were really building up.
They really did.
Like legit half of this season was literally going, it's coming, something's coming. And I think it had a good, solid payoff. I mean,
yeah,
I don't
it did.
Think we really
I absolutely loved it.
There is a frustration with going this long and not really, and the core concept being who's going to confess, and then realize at some point, like, okay, we're 3 seasons in. Let's just give me something, please, in this, because there is a side of you that's like, there was another show that was comparing this concept to, but there is something to be said about when your core concept is this. Like, this is the shtick. Let's be honest. Who will confess is the joke, the core opening joke. And you do realize that by getting that confession, that technically removes that core concept. But at the same time, you go for so long with these characters, you kind of want them to put an end to it. Like, please just finally give me that. But at the same time, I want this to keep going on forever and ever, because as we kind of noted with the second season, and now I'm noting again with the third season, this writer never, ever gets... They keep pulling it off. Like, every single joke, it works. Like, there may be one skit a season that I don't really care for, but you're talking about, what, 4 or 5 sometimes skits an episode times 12 to 13. They hit every time, and it's like a culmination of the writer being fantastic, of continuously, changing the formula and adding new jokes in there and presenting new concepts. And at the same time, A1 Pictures and the director behind this series is perfection. Like, this is adaptation perfection, because I don't even know if I'd ever be able to read the manga, because they pull this off so well. It's the narrator. It's the music. It's the visual style, the shifting of perspectives, the artistic choices per shot. It takes, like, the thing I mentioned in the first impressions, that was kind of one of my favorite parts of this entire season, was this whole scene where Kaguya Shinomiya finally gets a phone, and she gets online, which is a messaging service, and she gets in with everybody else, and Shirogane sends her a message, and she opens it and looks at it and goes, I'm gonna make him wait. I'm gonna act like I'm gonna act as if I didn't see it, and he'll be waiting for me to finally read it. And then Hayasaka's sitting there going, I gotta tell her. Like, it legit, there's a thing called a receipt of receiving, and it sent it to him. He knows that you read it. And she thinks that he doesn't know. And so it turns into this, again, whole long thing, like legit 5-10 minutes worth of content, just from them trying to realize, or just from Hayasaka wanting to know if she should tell Shinomiya being cocky, and then on the other side, Shirogane going, she thinks that I don't know. And was so well done. The perspective shots, the coloring, the shock faces, the narrator over the top of it, the music, the ambience, everything is perfection. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it. Every single episode for multiple skits somehow managed to make every scene look different, every way of dramatizing it different. It never feels samey, and yet it's kind of technically doing the same thing every time, where it's trying to over-dramatize these stupid situations, and it's perfection. Like, this is a 10 out of 10 show by far every single season, because they're so good at really pulling off these jokes.
There's a lot to be said, because I absolutely agree. I could never, after watching, even one season, I don't think I could ever go back to reading this in manga panels. I don't think that
if you do, you're gonna hear that guy's voice.
You're going to hear the voice. You're gonna hear Shinomiya, but you want to see them moving and reacting to each other.
That
maybe the
face when
panels
she finally realized.
Sometimes a manga artist can pull off that stuff, but I think that this visually in a animated medium, it probably hits the humor 10 times better. The reaction voices, the voices themselves would absolutely probably blow this away. There is some fantastic voice acting in this show that I don't think that I would enjoy the manga nowhere near as much as I enjoy the show itself.
Yeah. And we had a lot of really great moments at the very end of it, and I love it. Like I said, it's basically a perfect show. Like, through and through, it's a perfect show. There's very few shows that I say are perfect shows. This is definitely one of those. I just love it. It's great. So, enough gushing about Kaguya-sama Love is War Ultra Romantic. Check that out, definitely. And that's it for completed shows. We do have a few continuing shows, I guess. Well, 3. Summertime Rendering. This one is streaming on, unfortunately, Disney Plus. Can be accessed elsewhere. It's going to run for 25 episodes. Apparently, it's a full adaptation of the manga. It's being done by Studio OLM, and the genres are mystery, supernatural, suspense. Director is Ayumu Watanabe, who's done Komi-san Can't Communicate, Fortune Favors Lady Nikoku, Children of the Sea, After the Rain, and series composition by Hiroshi Seko, who did Attack on Titan, Jujutsu Kaisen, Dorehero, Vinland Saga, and Banana Fish. So, really, I guess somebody that came from MAPPA. Anyways, this one, man, gosh, where to start with this? So this takes place on this one island, this village on this island, and at some point, this guy named Shinpei is on a boat to go to that island because his childhood friend Ushio has unfortunately passed away, and he's going there for the funeral. Well, on the way there, he ends up having a dream of said girl in his dream, giving him a quote-unquote gift by touching his eye, and then saying to protect her sister, Mio. Well, after he arrives there, he quickly runs into Mio, or she runs past him on the bike and then flies off the edge and shows her pantsu. But he goes to the funeral, kind of gets a little bit of a hint from one of his friends, So, that some bad things may have happened to lead up to Ushio's death. She may not have just simply drowned trying to save this other girl, that she actually had strangle marks around her neck at the autopsy. So this starts to bring up a little bit of a question around that idea. The other thing that kind of is brought up is that this legend of this particular island is that there are these things known as shadows, that if you see a doppelganger of yourself, that is a shadow that will at some point kill you and then kill your family. They kind of replace you, so to speak. And so quickly, this is kind of bringing up a question mark because Mio says that Ushio seen a doppelganger before she died. And so it kind of gives a little bit of credit to this myth of this island, and eventually that leads them to kind of go to the temple to see if they could possibly cleanse themselves, because they believe that they may have seen a shadow. And that's when they end up running into this other Mio that kills them. Plot twist from the first episode. But yeah, that he quickly wakes up and he's back on the boat again. And time to start again. He kind of gets a little bit of deja vu, realizes really quickly that this is kind of weird. I feel like I was been here already, and thus starts this entire adventure. That's probably as far as I want to go, because That's legit the first episode. But that's the hook. That's the hook right there. A lot of people describe this story as being ReZero, essentially. I argue, yeah, if I want to get people to go watch the show, I'd probably say you got some vibes of ReZero's in there, so people are familiar with ReZero can probably jump into this one as well if you do like that kind of hook. But I would argue more this is similar to something like Higurashi, where you have secluded location, you have here is this lore behind this that somehow ties into reality, and yes, some sort of reset mechanic. But yeah, I don't want to go any further than that because I really do think this is one of those shows where you want to go into it as I honestly debated if I was even going to mention the idea of, yeah, seeing the other Mio and getting shot and all that kind of stuff, because this is one of those ones that I think is good to get into it as blind as possible. So to be as vague as possible, this show so far, and I'm 12 episodes in and it's not letting up, every episode is phenomenal. I love this show so much. I'm trying to get Chris into it, and the way that I'm hooking him into it is saying that Heine is Tama's seiyuu, so he's able to watch it now. But I love this show because this is one of those shows where every single episode reveals so many things, but then creates questions. And then it doesn't let it set for too long. It doesn't let question marks sit for too long. It eventually answers it. And it doesn't create too many questions that you're overwhelmed. But it also feels rewarding in the idea that as you speculate on what's around the corner, it reveals it to you in a way that's satisfying. It's a mystery, psychological type of show that really does reward you as you watch it for noticing things. Obviously, what I've been doing for this series, I've been watching it episode by episode and creating impressions videos. So if you've been watching Summertime Rendering, definitely go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/otakuspirit. I've been doing episode by episode impressions of it. The thing that I've been enjoying so much, obviously, is the mystery. Really going, who was this? Why did this show point this out? Why did he take note of this thing? And then realizing very quickly, or at least sometimes within an episode, oh, it acknowledges it. Like that was a reason. Okay, here's a really stupid example, but it's a very simple one, and I think it's not too much spoiler to point it out. One thing is that you'll notice within the first few episodes, it seemed like every single episode, it had to show Mio go down this trek, hit this edge, fly off her bike, and give you a pretty clear shot of what kind of color underwear she's wearing. At some point, there's a reason for that. Like I said, everything, it seems like it's kind of, why are we showing this? At some point, there's a reason. Like, this is one of those shows where seemingly so far, everything is for a reason. Something that seems out of place always has a purpose. And I think this writer is phenomenal at pulling that off. It's one of the most rewarding shows I've ever watched in trying to dig into the mystery of everything. It is one of the ones that has me gripped every single week. I want more and more and more. And every layer of this story they're peeling off has been truly fascinating to me. And on top of that, all the characters are fantastic. I love digging into each one of them so far. So not many of them have really deep stories so far. Like we have like a handful of characters that we've actually dived into, but they're stories that I want to know more about, and I want to see where it leads to. Some of the characters are simply just people that live in the village. Some of the characters have some backstory that are either tied in with what the overall story is or what kind of thing they're facing, and that stuff I love it. I love every bit of it. And yeah, Rika Jimi is in there as well. She's one of the girls in the show, which I thought is like, oh yeah, Rika Jimi. I love it. Yeah. Tangirl, best girl. Ushio's fantastic. Nagumo is great. Or Hizuru, sorry. Hizuru is great. And yeah, Tama's in here. Did I mention that Tama's seiyuu is in the show? Just wanted to put that out there. No reason whatsoever.
No, you definitely didn't text me about it.
Posted a clip on Twitter. Yes, her yelling about people stealing her food, which I thought was like the best clip to grab because she's yelling about somebody stealing her food.
She's adorable.
Yeah, she's great. It's a fantastic show. I cannot wait for more. This is probably this is one of those shows where every episode I'm like, okay, when is it going to start letting up? Like, when is this writer going to start losing their steam? And it doesn't seem like they are. And I've heard the source material is fantastic, so that leads me to believe that it hopefully will not fall apart. But it's definitely in the running for anime of the year already, and it might be possibly in the anime of the decade if I go that far. So we'll see. But that's Summertime Render. Check that out if you're in another country and you have Disney Plus. It's not in North America, because North America Disney Plus will probably never have this show. I'm still predicting that this will never end up on Disney Plus North America, unless they're just being extremely lazy and waiting for the whole thing to come so they can drop it all at once. I think Australia got it. I think somewhere in Europe got it. Obviously Japan's got it because that's where they're trying to really kick off. But yeah, I'm gonna stop. Couple of Cuckoos. This one is Kako no Inazuki. This one is streaming on Crunchyroll. Is running for 24 episodes. I've seen 8. Have you watched it all?
I watched
A few episodes.
I don't remember where I dropped off, but yeah, I've watched.
I think you've at least watched 3 because you were talking about Hiro, and before I started watching 3. So, anyways, Synergy SP is working on it, along with Shinny Animation. Sources of manga, genres are comedy and romance. And this one essentially follows Nagi Umino, and at some point he is told that he's going to meet his new parents. They've discovered that at birth he was switched with somebody else, and so now he's going to actually meet his real parents. And come to find out, he was kind of... It seems like his parents, and his actual parents and his current parents kind of came to an agreement that the best way to keep it to where both families can still see their children, because I guess for some reason they think that once they can't see them ever again. I don't know what it is. But the best way to do it is, oh yeah, by the way, one's a daughter and one's a son. Let's just have them marry. That way we can always see the two of them. And yeah, he quickly, as they're going on the way to meet each other, he ends up running into Erica, who's already learned about this, and she kind of ropes him into acting like her boyfriend, but then they come to find out, oh yeah, they're already set to be married anyways. So that doesn't work out for Nagi, because Nagi doesn't like the idea of being roped into marrying Erica, because he's already in love with this other girl at his school, Hiro, which or Segawa. And Segawa is like very competitive, and so she basically said that she is not going to acknowledge anybody as a boyfriend unless they beat him or beat her. And so he chooses to beat her at grades, and that leads into him finding out that, oh yeah, by the way, she set that expectation because she's technically engaged to somebody as well. And yeah, then insert his sister, before we find out that he's not blood related, who kind of has a fascination with him too. So she's obviously going, oh, we're not blood related anymore? Guess fair game. So yeah, love's not, I wasn't going to say love square, but it's technically just a harem. It's 3 girls after him. So yeah,
I think that's about where I was at, is the finding out that she was actually engaged. So.
Yeah, and it goes further from that to them meeting before school every day, then her finding out that he knows Erica and she's obsessed with Erica, and then we finally roped in Sachi. Sachi was kind of hesitant to meet Erica, even though she really wants a sister. And
yeah, I've seen that.
My thoughts on this show, I'm at episode 8 and not 11 or 12 because it's mid-season, and that's usually a drop-off point for me for trying to get caught up on reviewing shows and then getting started with the new shows in the next season. But I'm not sure if I'll get back to this, just because it's one of those ones where I don't really care. I don't care about anybody. Like Erica from the beginning with the whole, she basically blackmails him by saying that she's going to show off this picture where he's touching her, and uses that to force him to do things that I'd never like. So it was a very bad first impression. Plus she's super ditzy. She doesn't understand what a house is. She's so rich that she doesn't understand normal things like chairs and stuff. Hiro, even though she's now Toyama, which sold me immediately on her as a character, she's kind of a dumb character too. She's obsessed with competing with everything.
She's not obsessed. She's hyper obsessed.
Yeah. I think the only one that hasn't turned me off yet is the sister, and that's like its own problem child itself, is the whole Siscon Brocon thing. But she's about the only one that hasn't offended me. So I don't know. I think a lot of the comedy falls apart for me. I did get a huge kick out of the fact that at some point Nagi believes that his parents and Erika are going to go into a big brawl out in the restaurant. And the moment that it happened and suddenly he's in his mind is the mom does the usual biker gang thing because they're past biker gangs, which is everybody says this is basically Nisekoi because of that. But she does the whole biker thing of like, what do you think you're doing kind of thing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the whole rolling tongue thing. I'm like, oh, this is great. Oh, it was in his mind. That was like the best moment. And it was in their head. I don't know. It's just not doing anything. I guess that's my problem. It's like, not that the characters are bad, not that the writing's bad. Well, I guess you can say the writing's bad, but it just feels like nothing's really happening. It just feels very shrug. It's very shrug harem type show. So, it looks good. It visually looks good. But it's just not. It's not catching me with any of the characters so far. So. I don't know. I probably get back to it eventually, but it's really not doing anything for me so far.
I'm planning on getting back to it. It was doing fine for me, but at the same time, it wasn't. I kind of agree. It wasn't doing anything super spectacular. Actually, my frustration was that the test girl, her hyper overly obsessed. I've got to compete with everybody. Was a massive. For lack of a better term, disappointment. I was so excited about her as a character, and I wanted to get to her really badly, and I was really kind of turned off. I've never had a character that I was excited about. I've been kind of disappointed, but I've never had one actually completely turn me off, and that one was actually one I didn't like. I actually kind of didn't like her, so. That was and like I said, that's about the point in which I kind of dropped off. It wasn't that I never planned on getting back. I actually was that frustrated with her reveal. So yeah.
Speaking of, here's the other reason why I really want to stick with it. I forgot to mention earlier, but yeah, it technically is from the creator of Yamada and the Seven Witches. So I think that's kind of the other thing that's kind of a letdown for me is not really getting that same chemistry that they really pulled off with Yamada and the Seven Witches. But There's one other thing that kind of is another thing that kind of links it in with like Nisekoi is they have one of those moments where suddenly the character reveals that there's a secret that if they reveal it, it will change somebody's life. And it's like, just say it already. Like they have this whole moment where Erika's like, I have a secret, why I'm doing what I'm doing. But if I tell you, it's going to change your life. And then like later on, he comes back to her and says, okay, that thing you said. She's like, yeah, I'm not ready yet. It's like, just don't bring it up. Like, is this going to be the thing? Is this going to be the thing that we just keep dragging out forever and ever? It's like the photo. Who was in the photo with the quintessential quintuplets? Again, like the Nisekoi thing, was the key or something like that? Who had the key? Yeah, whatever. That's going to be the big.
And then everybody has a key.
Who has it? Who is it? Anyways, a couple of cuckoos. Check that out if that's interesting to you. Last one we have is AoAshi. This one is streaming on Crunchyroll. I'm in episode 6 of it already. This is one that I'm like terribly behind on, and I'm kind of regretting it right now. But being done by Studio Production IG, sources of manga, genres are sports and drama. So to give a quick idea of what this is about, it essentially follows a guy named Ashito, and Ashito is really good at soccer, but he's like currently when we open up the show, he's with a team of players out in the middle of nowhere, and they're all terrible at the game, but he's really good. So they just kind of focus on getting the ball to him so that he can score. Well, at some point, he gets scouted by this guy from this place in Tokyo, I believe. And this guy really wants Ashito to join, but unfortunately, he doesn't really have the money to do it. His family's like really poor and just barely getting by, but eventually they kind of they figure out a way that he can at least go, or at least his brother figures out a way for him to go, pays for him to go and actually try out at least. And he actually succeeds and gets into the tryouts, or at least succeeds in the tryouts. Well, this kind of leads to this whole problem of like, well, how are they going to actually have the money to do this, and what is it going to mean for the family? And eventually they kind of figure it out. So the thing that the reason why I say that I'm kind of it's unfortunate that I haven't watched beyond episode 6, because I think that so far this show is literally one of my favorite sports show that I've seen in a long time. I absolutely love this show. And I think that's, as we've mentioned before, the human element. This show isn't really about the sport. It's about the characters involved with the sport. It's about, developing the characters themselves so that way when they do compete, you are rooting for them because you understand them as people. And I think this is doing a phenomenal job so far, especially for Ashito, a little bit with some side characters as well. But the main key thing here, and why, like I said before, I kind of wish that I watched more, is that technically the first 6 episodes is the build up to Ashito going to this other school and joining this team. But it's also about developing Ashito's purpose and his driving force. What his driving force is, what his family is doing to allow him to seek out his dreams, which technically his dreams is to support his family. Like, if I can become it, I'm pretty good at this. If I can become a pro, I can make it to where my mother and my brother never have to worry about money again. And that's kind of a big ask, especially when you consider there's not many big time soccer players making a lot of money. So the bar is really high. But at the same time, his family is supporting him. They are doing everything they can in order to support him to do this. And like I said, the 6th episode ends with this huge emotional emotional pinnacle point for establishing his family is behind him and he cannot fail. So the question mark is the writer, was that the writer's like, okay, here's the backstory, now soccer? Or is it going to be one of those things where there's still going to be great character moments? There's still going to be moments where it builds up, and that's something, unfortunately, I haven't got a chance to confirm yet. So I will say, first 6 episodes were absolutely phenomenal. I think this show is fantastic. If it's continuing to do that, and it continues that for 2 whole seasons or cores for this first season, I'm sold. I think this is going to be probably a 8-9 out of 10 show for me easily, just based on that. So I'm looking forward to more of it. Based on 6 episodes, I think it's phenomenal. Check that out if that is interesting to you, because it got me. It got me bad. It got me with the feels bad. Ugh, it hurt. It hurt. I made like a whole video. When I watched the 6th episode, I made a whole video on like, holy crap. This is one of those shows where the side characters steal the show. Like the mother and Hana, those characters, and the brother, Shun, those characters legit stole the show from Ashito. Like, these are my favorite characters because that was super emotional. So, yeah, the quirk behind Ashito, by the way, is that he's able to really kind of scope out the field and almost take an image of where everybody's at. The whole perspective that they give is this hawk flying over the field and acknowledging where everybody is out on the field. That's his skill, is he's very attentive of where everybody's at all times. And he almost has like a photographic memory of it. Like, he's able to kind of tell at the time exactly where everybody was, but then he doesn't know how he does it, which is kind of the quirk. So anyways, yeah, AoAshi, really, really phenomenal. If you like characters and story with your sports. So that's it. That's a wrap of the spring 2022 anime season. Hope you guys enjoy all of our reviews. This didn't turn out as long as I thought it would be, but it's still a long episode. So that's it. That's all of spring. Hope you guys enjoyed all of our reviews of all these shows. We definitely welcome you to join us as we go into the summer season. There's a lot of shows next season. There's a lot of shows. Every season there's more and more shows, but I hope you guys will join us for that. Next week we have a lot of news to go over because Anime Expo happened, so definitely be on the lookout for that. As always, if you guys want to support us additionally in any other different way, we have all the links at otakuspread.com. That's where you can go for our social media links, Discord link, our Patreon link, a way that you can give it. We have a tips link there as well. Additionally, if you listen to us on YouTube, you can support us through a super thanks button. Additionally, if you've not already, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell other people about us. It's the best way to help support us, even if you can't support us monetarily. Checking out our videos, subscribing there. Twitch, if you have a Twitch Prime, we have a Twitch account. You can go there and Twitch Prime us, and we definitely appreciate that. But anyways, we hope you guys enjoyed this review, and as always, we thank you for all your support, and you all take care.
Os!